Howdy, everybody. Today is Tuesday, July 26, 2022, and the time is 5:30 p.m. We're here for the regular call session of the Coppell City Council. There is a quorum present, so I'm calling the meeting into order. We will be convening into executive session in the first floor conference room. At the end of our executive session, I will come out and announce that we are convening into work session, at which time the public will be invited. Thank you very much. Good afternoon again. The time is 6:09 p.m. We have adjourned from executive session and we are moving into work session in the first floor conference room. The public is invited to attend with us. Thank you.
I'm just telling you, if you ever get in a situation like that, here in a minute.
Our life trouble.
Good afternoon, everybody. The time is 6:10 p.m. We're moving into work session. We've got 5 items on the agenda tonight. The first one is a discussion regarding the agenda item, or the agenda, agenda items, the agenda. The only thing is, we'll explain a little bit more out on the floor, but we're going to ask that item number 9 be postponed. Just long story short, there was a significant, my words, not Kim's words, there was a significant difference in the estimated value of our property values versus the certified. The certified were significantly higher. So she's having to go back and basically rerun all of her numbers, and we'll have those for you Thursday night, but she's not quite ready with all the intricacies that she'll go into on Thursday night. So we're asking for a postponement on that one. There's no risk to the budget. I mean, we'll be voting on it that night on August 23rd, so it's no big deal. Now, do we need to announce it on the 9th and vote on it on the 20th?
It will be on the 9th agenda, the exact same thing that you had tonight, because it's the advertisement process. It'll be announcing the public hearing for the 23rd and saying what the maximum tax rate could be considered by the council.
Well, this says the 23rd, so that's supposed to be the 9th?
This will be on the agenda on the 9th.
Okay. So we need to postpone it to the 9th.
And the only vote you're taking that night is
to publicize
to publicize the public hearings.
So we vote on it to publicize it, and then we vote on it after we've publicized it, correct? Which will be done on the 23rd.
Correct.
Yes, it gets worse confusing than that. Anybody have anything else on the agenda? There's only one other agenda item, and that's announcing the election, plus the consent agenda. Don?
I've got a couple of items. So on that, the special election, just out of curiosity, So we have a 1/4 cent sales tax, 2 1/4 cent sales tax reauthorizations we're gonna have. One of them is for 4 years, one's for 10 years, and just from a history, why the difference in how long we authorize?
It's the statute.
Okay,
And that's what we've been working on at the legislature for the last 2 sessions, to turn the crime control district, no, to turn the street use district, or street
Longer.
use sales tax to the 10 years,
okay,
so that we don't have to go through this cost each time of going
Right.
through the election.
We
okay,
got
so
it.
it's just by statute.
We got it up to their attention last session, it just didn't get to the floor.
Right.
And then on consent item E, just a quick question, so these 55 poles, these were not included in the original Beltline reconstruction, is this something that came up after the fact, or what's?
It's, so our practice historically has been on projects like this, we purchase the poles separate.
Okay,
So they're part of the project, they were designed, they're included in the plans, but the poles and the lights themselves, we procure separate and then provide those to our contractor to install. One, it's a unique design, so it's a way we can make sure they're made right and delivered right. And we actually save a little bit of money because we don't get the contractor's markup by procuring the same poles that we can buy separately. So we've done that for Freeport Parkway, we did it for Parkway Boulevard, we've done it for
Sandy
Denton
Lake.
Tap and Sandy Lake median project. So that's just been our practice, is to buy the poles separate.
I think to answer Councilmember Carroll's question, they're part of the budget, they're just purchased separately.
well, they're not being paid out of bond proceeds or anything, that's sort of also where I was going, is like, it's being paid out of the infrastructure.
It's
Cool.
being paid out of 1/4 cent. We have multiple funding sources on Beltline. So we
Okay.
did sell bonds, but we also have general fund revenue that was set aside for Beltline. We have 1/4 cent IMF money. We actually have utility money.
Okay.
And we're going to end up using some DUD money before it's said and done.
Okay,
Yeah, so
Okay.
that was all strategized to reduce the amount of debt we were selling for
Okay.
Beltline.
that's it, it makes.
If I could just follow up on that, then, what's the cost, expected cost on the lights then? The fixture itself?
$238.
How much?
$238 a piece. So it comes up to about $20-something thousand.
For the
And-
fixtures.
For the fixtures, that's it.
And are the lights, I think these are the LED lights, right? How far are we going to be replacing these? Is it just the main streets? I mean, is that
This is just
gonna,
the Beltline project.
in the long run, are we actually going?
Any street that has street lights on it currently, when we go in and rebuild that street, we'll replace those lights with this LED style.
The only one we're rebuilding the street,
Correct.
not the street that's fine, but,
No, we don't have any plans outside of our reconstruction projects to replace street lights. We are adding a couple on the north end of Denton Tap, but it's part of the intersection improvement project that's up there in the Coppell Greens area.
So these light designs have a slightly smaller coverage area than the incandescent, but they also have a much more directed pattern, so there's less light bleed over. But since they have a slightly smaller pattern, they have to be put close together. That's why he can't just go in and replace the existing ones. It has to be a
okay.
complete redesign. I got really excited when we first heard about that because it was cool.
Yeah, I thought some residents were asking you, when's the street light gonna be next? So I was just wondering, so.
Okay,
Sorry.
Don or Kevin, somebody raised their hand down there?
I have.
All good.
John?
I have a few things. I just had a question on 3B, which is the citizen survey. I don't know. No, I was just wondering, is this, I noticed that it says from August to September. Is that pretty much the time frame we actually send out surveys generally, or what's the reason for picking that time frame?
I know that she's going to be having a full presentation on it,
Okay.
that she'll be addressing that question.
Okay. I'll just wait.
So,
Okay, fine. Well, actually, yeah, let me just go ahead and do the, I guess, consent agenda item. Let's see. Well, no, I'll wait for that presentation. On D. Hey, got a question on MacArthur Boulevard. On the this is part of asking about that, but like the median is actually managed by HOA, right? No?
No, we turned it back over to
You did?
the city. We asked them to take it.
Okay.
So that was when I was on the HOA board.
Okay.
Sorry. Define that we, right?
On the conservation, I saw the, let's see,
So, John, which item are you on?
on C.
It's talking about C.
Yeah, consent agenda item C.
Okay, thank you.
Let me pull that up real quick.
And they'll be talking about the water conservation plan in work session as well.
Okay, I'll wait. I'll wait on that one. And then I had, what's the other one? Question on F. So I was curious about this one. It talks about initial cost was $244.
Which item?
F.
Okay, thank you.
The initial cost was $244,300, right? And then I saw something about it says the final price or final design cost. So now we're asking for $172 with the amendment. So this was never, final cost was never actually taken into consideration initially when we asked for the design?
So, Jamie can chime in as well. When we initiated this project, we knew we needed to go and explore. This was, the history is, originally, the city's plan was to build a second pump station.
Right.
Okay, when we decided to go away from that and fill those needs with other projects, we knew we wanted to go and make modifications at Village Parkway. And conceptually, we knew what that would entail, but detail-wise, we didn't know exactly what it was going to require. And it's going to require a lot. In fact, we're going to be drilling through the floor of the existing pump station, basically shoehorning in a valve. We're going to be adding other valves and vaults and meters. So it's a very involved project. And we didn't know that final scope until the original scope went in to determine kind of what the final scope is. So they've taken the design and the exploration as far as they can with that original scope. We need a pretty heavy structural add to the team. We need electrical services to be provided. So what this is to get us from as far as we could take that original scope and finish out the design so we can get it bid and awarded and constructed. Also includes construction phase services.
And this amendment is not going to impact the estimated $4 million cost. It's not going to go over.
Correct.
Right?
Right. And we sold bonds, actually 2 bond sales have sold for this overall project. So.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, moving on to item D, regarding the citizen survey, Ms. Shavetta.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Vicki Shavetta, Deputy City Manager, and with us tonight via Zoom is Ron Gailey with On Point Insights. Ron, if you'll just wave. Can you hear us? We're here to provide you with an overview of the upcoming citizen survey to answer your questions and to get your feedback on a specific question that is in the handout that I just gave to you, that Mike just handed out. It's one that refers specifically to council. This question that I'm referencing is on page 11 of the draft survey. and we will come back to that at the end of the presentation to get your feedback on it. As we go through the PowerPoint tonight, our agenda is to go over some background information, to provide you an overview of the survey, to review our marketing strategy, and to show you the timeline for the project. So traditionally, the city has conducted citizen satisfaction surveys approximately every 2 years. The last survey was completed in 2019. We budgeted for a survey in fiscal year 2021, but it was decided to postpone it until this year. So this spring, the city issued a request for proposal, and we received 6 responses. A team of 4 staff members reviewed the RFPs. We interviewed 3 companies, and we selected OnPoint Insights to serve as our consultant. In addition to experience and cost, the factors that we considered are up on the screen here. These are the factors we considered for evaluation of the consultants. One of the things is keeping it short was really important to us, and we learned from the last survey that it was much too long. The survey time for that was about 32 minutes. So we were looking for a survey that is designed to be on an average 10 minutes long. We also wanted accessible delivery methods. This survey uses QR codes for easy mobile access, and it has a feature that allows you to speak your comments for open-ended questions. There's a lot of other ways that I'll go through for delivery as well. And in addition to the reliability of the data, we also wanted the data to be accessible through an interactive dashboard that will allow staff and the public the ability to filter the data, and it will be available through our website. Ron will talk more about that in his overview, and he'll also show you some examples of the dashboard. And Ron, I'm going to turn it over to you.
For me, okay?
Gotcha.
Yes. All right. I just want to summarize a few things for you. First, the purpose of the survey is really to help you as city leaders understand the citizen priority and really understand how you are rated on each item that citizens feel are an important priority. And in truth, what we have built, or what we are building, is for you as city leaders, and it's also useful for citizens, but it's not like other citizen surveys where everything comes through as important. We have citizens rank what's important, but in a way that's easy and intuitive and pretty fast. I'll demonstrate that for you in a minute. And I want to just talk briefly about what we're going to learn. I'm going to show you the dashboard in a minute, but to be brief, what you're going to learn is what's important to many people and what's important to a few, so you can wisely prioritize. We'll learn how citizens feel about city facilities, about the city qualities or benefits, about growth and development issues, about safety and security issues, about the operational expectations they have of the city. In developing the survey, we looked at many different citizen surveys, found their flaws, and created one that is very balanced and very thorough, and yet very fast to take. As Vicki mentioned, about 10 minutes is normal. We'll also learn how citizens feel about the city staff, and we'll get ratings on the departments that they use. And we'll get information about the various city events that you put on, which ones are important to people, and how should we best communicate with them. So it's a good, nice, varied study. I want to talk briefly about data integrity. Garbage in, garbage out, right? So we want information that you can totally trust. And for every city, we have a minimum of a 4-step process to validate the data and make sure participants are valid and make sure they're not stuffing the ballot box, so to say. For Coppell, we're using 5. And we won't go into detail on those, but we want to make sure that nobody is taking the survey that doesn't really belong there. And we have a good process to do that for you. Finally, Vicki mentioned mobile accessibility. In a Florida city that we recently did, it was a retirement area, we had over 55% take the survey on their mobile phone. In a nearby Texas city, we had about 65% take it, and that's kind of typical, is where almost 2/3 are taking it on their mobile phones. And so we designed the survey so that it's super friendly for mobile phone users. Not that it can work on a mobile phone, in fact, it's designed for the mobile phone, and it works very well on computer as well. But we make it that way so that it works better that way. And then the last thing that Vicki mentioned, and we'll go through it right now, is the dashboard. Instead of giving you a 150-page dashboard, or 150-page paper report that gets stored in a file somewhere, or a PDF that you can make your way through, we give you a dashboard that is very powerful. And Vicki, can you move to the next slide and we'll show some of the pages. So this first page that you look at right now, this is an actual dashboard. You'll see up in the upper left-hand corner, it says Marco Island, that's in Florida. This is one that we did for them. And would they refer the city to a friend, is what this is asking. And many gave a very high rating on a score from 0 to 10. You can see that in the blue. Some gave a lower rating. You can see that in the red. I've seen cities that are better than this one. One in Florida was in the mid-50s for a promoters minus detractor score. Excuse me. I've seen one that is just the opposite, where things were really not going well in that city, and they had far more negative people than positive people. But it's a good measure that we can compare across cities, and we can let you know how you stand versus similar cities of your size, and give you a feeling and trends over time. Are people wanting to refer us more or less? You'll also notice on the left-hand side, the navigation pane. To go through the city, to go through it, and this is just a still screenshot, but you just click on any of the questions on the left, or any of the topics on the left, to go to any part of the survey you want to very easily. And on the right-hand side, you'll see that there are filters. If I say, well, yes, but how do men feel? Or how do women feel? Or how do older people feel? Or how do younger people feel? Or how about people who have been in the city for just 5 years or so? Or longer-term residents, how do they feel? Or even moms with kids. The ability to kind of filter and combine groups of filters together to slice and dice the data is right at your fingertips, and it's really intuitive and easy to do. Next slide. An important question in the survey is, what is the direction of the city? Has it changed since you moved here, or has it improved or gotten worse? Are we going in the right direction or the wrong direction? This is for a Texas city, and they're doing really well. I mean, people love it. You're going the right direction. It's improved since I've gotten here. And on the bottom, compared to other cities, this is a great place to live. I've seen them where it's a little more mixed, right? And so hopefully what we do is we understand how the direction is of the city is perceived by your residents, and then we can track it over time, and you can move from great to better, or you can move from fair to much better, right? And we'll be able to track the improvement of how things are going. But the real importance of the survey is the next section I want to show you. So I want to go to the next slide. So this is a culmination slide, and let me describe it very briefly. For 5 different topic areas, we present up to 10 different things that you may be doing in those areas, like city facilities, or growth and development, or safety and security. And we have citizens tell us what's most important to them. After they've gone through 5 different sections telling us what's most important to them, we show them the 10 things that they said were most important. And for each person's 10 most important things, we say, so how is the city doing? Are we doing very good or good? Or are we doing poor and very poor? And so what you have on this particular slide is a rank order preference from the citizens of what are the most important things. And this page only shows the top 20 out of 50, right? So all of these items here are potentially very important. And you can see if you're doing poor or if you're doing good. right, on those attributes. And so what it allows the city to do is quickly spot of the top 10 items to citizens, where are we falling a little bit short and where are we doing really well? And of the top 20, where are we falling short and where are we doing very well? I just want to point out, for example, in this particular city, this is a Texas city, they said that schools were very important, but that's really good, right? I mean, that's not an area of focus. So you know that it's important and they're doing great. But you can see maybe the 9th one down, it talks about restaurants, quality places to eat. And it's in the top 10, but it's an area for improvement for that particular city. And I'd still say that this one from Texas is vastly different from the one from Marco Island, Florida, and much different from one in Atlanta, Georgia, right? And so every city is really quite different, and you'll be able to know for your city the priorities and the areas where you're falling short. Tracking this over time will also be a huge benefit. And you can also slice it by old and young, long in the city, new to the city, etc. The final couple of things I want to show you are on the next two slides. So the next one, city staff ratings. We'll have that. If they interacted with city staff, you'll have ratings, and it's very useful to find the areas where you can potentially improve with city staff and interactions with the citizens. Next one is, this is one that asks about all of the initiatives, the events that you do in the city. We've done it for Coppell. This is one for Florida City. But we asked citizens which ones are very important to your household. And they were able to see the ones that are really highly important to the citizens and where the areas are for improvement. But every slide that we give you will be intuitive, easy, with the ability to slice and dice the data. This Florida example I want to show you, it's on their website right now. And it's been on their website since they finished. And routinely they refer to it in city council meetings to help citizens recall where the priorities are for the city at this point in time. Back to you, Vicki.
Thank you, Ron. Appreciate that. So now we'll talk a little bit about the marketing strategy that we have, which includes multiple methods of delivery. Two of the primary ways that you'll be able to access the survey will be through a QR code or a web link. And in addition to promoting the survey across all kinds of social media, we'll be using text messaging and emails. We'll put flyers in our facilities. We'll reach out in the e-news and water bill insert in local newspapers. And we'll also use the digital signage in our facilities. We have a goal. It's a pretty lofty goal to reach 1,000 responses, although 400 responses is considered enough for a valid survey. And from the conversations that we've had with Ron, a shorter survey and using these types of outreach methods can increase the number of responses that you typically achieve in a survey. Next slide. So the final draft of the survey will be completed shortly after this meeting. We plan to run the survey from August 15th through September the 9th to be sure that we can get it into the city's water bill insert. Analysis of the survey will run concurrently with the survey. As data is collected, it will begin to be analyzed, and the final results are anticipated to be available this fall. At this time, we're ready to get your feedback on the question that's on page 11 of your handout and to answer any other questions you may have. The question is on page, it's at the top of the page. It's a open-ended question, and it's asking if there's anything more you'd like to say to the leaders of Coppell to help you improve the services we provide. Please do so below. So if that question it needs your approval, that will be something that's directed directly to council.
Let me explain briefly about that question. After citizens have seen all of the various topics in the survey, we ask them if they have anything more they would like to say to city leaders. This is where we get rich feedback on the areas where they have complaints or concerns. And then we provide the data to you in a format that's very easy to digest, even though there are a lot of comments. And we didn't demonstrate it here, but I want to tell you that you'll be able to go through their comments in an intuitive and a natural way, focusing on the areas where you are most interested in learning what they have to say specifically.
Council, any questions for Vicki?
So it looks like the entire survey is done via the electronic devices, so there's no paper surveys or anything like that?
It's online, it's all electronic, yes.
Okay. Just curious if there was, because I think about people who aren't as tech savvy, making sure that we're getting information from them. Has it always been online for the past several years, or any historical information on that?
In the past, we had used phone surveys quite a bit, and those are the ones that really take the long 32-minute timeframes. And then we've also used the online method using QR codes, not QR codes so much as the website address,
Gotcha.
but they're typically digital or by phone. The
And
past few years.
I guess last fall.
I did this in a Florida retirement community, right? Mark Weiland is like very old compared to most cities. Probably the average age is 20 years older than your citizens. And honestly, we got 3,000 responses out of about 2,000 citizens, or 20,000 citizens. So we got about a 20% response rate, really high. And they did fine. I'm sure there might have been a person or two that had a struggle, but not very many. And it came through quite well.
Brianna?
Well,
Go ahead. I was curious, it talks about wanting, I guess, ideally like 1,000 responses. If on September 9th, we don't have that number, or we're not even close, right, from that threshold, will we extend it? Or is that like an absolute cutoff? Like, I'm trying to figure out what we're doing to meet that threshold.
Well, as I mentioned before, we only need 400 to make it a valid survey. So if we get 400, we could cut it off then, but we will leave it open until September 9th.
Can I add a little bit? We've done this in many cities, and we typically can get an 8 to 12% response rate. That's really normal, right?
Okay.
You have 40,000 people in the city, so, but a lot of them are kids, so you probably have 20,000 adults. And we should really, 1,000 I think is extremely conservative estimate, and most of them come in the first week or so. So I don't see a problem, but as your question is logical, would we extend it? Of course, but we would provide you the data where we stand at a point in time that, Vicki would like to share the data, and we might leave it open to just bring in a few more. But you don't have much to worry about here. I'm 100% confident that you'll get your data and more than you expected.
Okay, gotcha. I guess I want to know, like, historically, what has been the number that we've usually received in our surveys? Because I know we've also done paper ones, not just phone.
Right.
So,
Well, so up until about 4 or 5 years ago, they were only phone.
Okay.
That was it. And the reason why we got away from the phone is because it was only landline.
right,
So there
Yeah.
was the movement to cell phone, if you recall that
Right.
discussion. Then we changed companies, and
Okay.
that's when it started getting a little bit funky as far as how are we getting responses and how are they being done. And the one time, I think, there was a paper, and the responses were still primarily through the phone and the website. So from a validity standpoint, it started, if you recall, there was one survey that one year that it got off in terms of the validity issue.
yeah, and that's why I was trying
Right.
to figure out, like, numbers and where we needed to be and how that was gonna work. Because I do remember I was having issues with this in the past.
Because for the longest time, back in the 90s, we used the same company, and they didn't want to get away from only using landline, and the council said, a lot of people don't even have landlines anymore, and so how do you do that? And plus, it was skewed towards an older population.
I'm remembering 870 in one survey,
Okay,
and about half of that in another one, based on kind of what he was talking about.
gotcha. Okay,
Mark?
thank you. Yeah, John.
Yeah, so I had a couple comments. I think I agree with Kevin's concern about there not being a paper factor, but what happens if we promoted it at the senior center and had facilitators there that might?
Yeah, we have laptops, we have computers there too.
That's actually what Don and I were just kind of,
Okay.
Yeah, we have
talking
computers.
like, but since he's the representative, that he can help promote, that, and there are computers there that, you know,
Exactly.
if the team can be there to help that group, I think it'd be good.
We also have
The library.
Yeah, John.
Library, I guess.
Library.
Yep.
John.
Finish?
No.
Sorry, I didn't forget John. I wasn't, I didn't mean for
That's
you to
called
cut off
passing the
Mark.
buck around. We're back to Mark.
So Ron, I want to ask you, when you're taking the survey, is there a progress bar that tells you you're 50% complete with
Yeah.
the survey?
There is.
Okay, good. Let you know that you're finally getting to the end. And then, that first slide that you had on the dashboard, under the demo filters, there was the resident category. What is in that drop-down?
No, that was only for Marco Island, Florida. They had a special need, and they have a lot of people who don't live on the island but own property on the island.
Okay.
And they wanted to be able to slice it between them, and so we had a filter for them. So any unique filters to Coppell, we'll be able to put them in there for you to slice on. But I've just shown you the generic ones, and on that particular page, we have the resident filter. On the next one, which is the Texas City, it's not there, right? So if we go like to the next slide, it's not there, but that was just unique to them.
What's that?
I do like the progress bar. I'm glad you asked that because the school district just sent one recently and people around town were like, oh, did you see that survey? And then people weren't even opening it because they didn't want to even attempt to start it. And so until people were saying, hey, it's not that bad, it only has X number of questions.
Yeah.
And we'll be
You're
promoting
so right on
this
the
short.
importance of that.
Would this be of value at all to have a filter for what school district you're in? Since we have three.
One thing we've done that may be useful is we're going to put a map of the city up on the question. We're going to say which area of the city do you live in, and there's 7 different areas, geographical areas. And based on that selection, you'll know where they live. Now, I don't know if you need to do something unique about school district, that's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know where those lines fall in relationship to this map. I don't know if that's important or would achieve any different in the filtering. But just something
So
to
we'll
consider.
have that filter on there for the area in the city that they live in. So
Okay.
if that has any real interest, you'll be able to see it.
Yeah, that's cool. Awesome.
We were in a city and each city council member was over a different area of the city. And so we put a map in for that and that was very helpful to them. But I don't think that you're more at large, aren't you, as a city council?
Yes.
So it doesn't apply here, but yeah, we have that ability.
Okay, and then I had 2 more comments. So on page 7 of our handout, we talk about which things are most important. And you say maintain, repair streets, and then maintain parks. So then I go back to page 5, and we talk about city qualities and benefits. And you don't really come out and say parks. You say greenscapes, you say gathering spaces. I really think we need to add parks in there as an item so people, there's no question about which one it falls under.
We also did add a lot of city facility parks in that section.
Mm-hmm.
But we could also ask, are you talking overall park system in
I would just put parks.
qualities?
Yeah, I mean, I know that we probably are referring to city gathering spaces maybe as parks. I don't know, or city greenscapes as parks. I think
The
we need.
greenscapes were more of things like the medians and
Yeah.
the city in general and how it looks
I
in
think you
general.
need to be specific on that because I would confuse that like Mark is talking about. If you say greenscapes, I'd think parks,
Yeah,
not
so
medians.
let's just add parks. As Ben
You can
11.
do that.
Quick question, Mark, just follow up on that.
Yes.
The question right above, it does say city parks and open spaces. No, because are you specifically wanting it down there?
Well, you've got bike and pedestrians.
Okay.
So,
I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure that,
Yeah, all the parks are listed.
Anything else? Bijou?
Yeah.
Why do you keep skipping John?
Because he's,
He hasn't asked
Hold his
anything.
questions up on that other.
I'm looking out for you, John.
because I saw Bijou's hand go up first.
Oh my, his hand went up before mine. Okay, thank you,
No,
sorry.
no, no, your hand went up before.
No, you're good, you're good, go ahead. We're good.
Y'all figure it out.
Okay, well, I'll ask the question then. Electronics, so this questionnaire will be in your mobile phone app, city's mobile phone app?
It'll be accessible through a QR code on your mobile phone.
No, 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 my question is, on the city's mobile app, do we have this questionnaire?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, on the website.
Not
No, on the
website.
app.
On the
Access-
app, on the app, there'll be a citizen survey push
Link.
go.
Push and
Yes.
So that will take you to where?
The
To the
survey.
link.
To the
So
survey.
that's on a website.
Yes.
It's on your
It's hosted on the
phone.
website.
It's
It's
on the
hosted on the
website.
website. You can access it to your app.
It's on a
different link, so it's
Yes.
not on the
different
phone.
apps.
Say
Right.
Yeah.
It's designed for
So,
mobile
so
phone.
whether you go on your, and correct me if I'm wrong, but whether you go on the QR code, whether you go on the website, or whether you go through your app, it's all gonna take you to the same portal.
It's the same place, identical place, yeah. The QR code merely just points you to the same URL or location that you would have. And the web, and the city, if they go from the city page and they click on that, they would go to the same place. So, and also an email would have a link that would take them to the same place, but we can tell which one they came from. And so we'll be able to tell you which method was most effective in reaching citizens for the next time. We can do it even better.
John?
Okay.
After he's done.
He's on before Cliff. So the question I was asking before was, from August to September, is there a specific reason why we picked that time frame?
There is somewhat of a specific reason, that is so we can make sure we get the information in the water bill insert.
Okay,
But we're just trying to get it done before the end of the fiscal year,
okay.
and because we've been working on this project all fiscal year.
And you said typically we get 400 responses in the past. That's
I
about
couldn't tell you the average because I don't have those numbers,
Okay.
but that's what you need a minimum of to have a valid survey.
Okay. But, okay, that's the minimum, but you don't know what the average of responses we've had in the past.
I do not have that information.
And in the past, it has been similar, I guess, to what we're trying to do, deliver it with the, well, I guess this is a new thing, right? QR code and all?
This is all new,
New.
right?
Okay. The reason why I asked the time frame is because I thought there's some, I could be wrong, I thought we might have done some like in-person encouragement at maybe Kaleidoscope or something. And that actually, I thought would really encourage a lot of people to go online, but that doesn't, August to September doesn't really coincide with any of the events.
Right, we haven't done a citizen survey at Kaleidoscope. We did do a survey, but it wasn't a citizen survey.
Okay, but I thought that even Kaleidoscope we got pretty good responses when we actually did in person and encouraged them to whether do the survey or go online. And I thought that would be very effective, but this doesn't really, it's out of, like in the middle of no events.
We've talked about going to events like Farmers Market, but I feel like that if we get the number of responses that we hope to get, that'll be enough.
I think
In
because we're
terms of
going to
numbers for
emails
validity.
and SMSs, because we're going to emails and we're texting people, we're going to have huge coverage of the city. And SMSs work particularly well, by the way. In another city that I did, we got 30% citizen response rate because of an SMS. I don't know that we'll get that high, but we get really good response to SMS.
And John, to answer your question, in the past when we've done the surveys, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike and Vicky, but when we did surveys at an event, they were very short, very targeted. Most of them had to do with like our events, our parks, like just like one theme, not a full-fledged citizen survey.
Okay. But being that it's only 8 to 10 minutes, at least we could, well, I think a lot of times it has to do with people not knowing about it enough to participate and honestly, 1,000 responses, to me, that's a real low goal, but.
It's actually, I did a little research on it. 1,000 is considered to be the most you need to shoot for. There's some caveats. You have to be equally distributed across your population, kind of blind, but which this will be the way they're doing it. But 1,000 is considered to be more than adequate.
Low to my standard.
Bijou?
Yeah, I just have one follow-up questions to the city parks. We have all the facilities listed here. I was thinking as a feedback, if we list all the parks we have, Andrew Brown East, West, other, what are the usage or how many people use those particular park, Kid Country, for example. So we'll get an idea what demographic is using what parks and so on and so forth.
As we were developing this survey, there were a lot of things we thought we might need to take a deeper dive in, but that detracts from this particular survey. We would want to do more of a pulse survey, which is a very brief, short survey about things like that that are very specific. So we do have the opportunity to do that, to gather that kind of information as well. The question we asked ourselves multiple times was, how is it going to benefit us? What information are we trying to gather from this survey, and how is it going to benefit the city to learn about those things?
Okay, thanks.
Brianna?
Sorry. Mine just a quick one and maybe just a clarification, but on number 13, the title of the question is race, but it asks for ethnicity, and there could be multiple responses. If we're looking for race and ethnicity, or one or the other, can we do race/ethnicity? Because I think otherwise it's unclear. Or if you only want ethnicity, then ask for ethnicity, otherwise are we only asking for race? That's the only one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, thank you though.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being
Thank
here,
you,
Ron.
Thank you. All right, next item is C, a discussion regarding the ADA transition plan and accessible ramp designs. Ms. Corey Allen.
Are we clear to keep these, or do you need to collect them?
You can keep them.
No jokes in the way.
I'm going to invade your space. I hope
That's
that's
okay.
okay. It's easier
Authorized.
this way than you
Yeah.
seeing the home improvement.
No, you're good.
We'll sing it.
Yeah, do this all night. Good evening, council. My name is Corey Allen. I'm going to be giving you an update on our ADA program and also diving into accessible curb ramps. Okay, who am I? My name is Corey Allen, and I'm the ADA and Capital Programs Coordinator for the city. So 50% of my job is our ADA program, and the other 50% is capital assets in public works. I am a member of the Texas Governor's Committee on People with Disabilities. This is my second term. I was originally elected in 2020. I'm also a DFW chapter officer for Little People of America. So what is the ADA? How does it apply to Coppell? ADA stands for the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's a civil rights law that was signed by President George H.W. Bush on July 26, 1990. Today is actually the 32nd birthday, which is so cool. So happy birthday, ADA. It requires private and public entities to be accessible. So it includes the physical facility as well as services, programs, policies, and procedures. In Coppell, the ADA applies to both our employees and our citizens. We want to make sure that employees, if they're here to work, that they have the accommodations they need to do their job effectively, as well as our citizens being able to enjoy the city as much as the rest of us do. So what is a transition plan? Why do we need it? What is it for? Basically, an ADA transition plan is a comprehensive report of all facets of the city. So physical things, policies, procedures, programs, services, our employee handbook, our website, all of the things, and it tells us items that we need to work on to make them more accessible. So in 2010, the Department of Justice started requiring that municipalities, cities, and counties have a transition plan in place and be working on it. In 2015, Coppell approached Accessology 2, based out of McKinney, to consult with creating our ADA transition plan. The end of 2015, City Council approved for Accessology to assess the city. In 2016, the transition plan was created. It took them 9 months to do so. Like I said, it covered everything. It was 11 pounds when we printed it, and it fills about 6 to 7 binders in my office. So it is robust. Because it is so robust, Public Works Department realized that it would not be managed by someone who was already here at the city. It would need to be a brand new position that just managed the ADA transition plan. So the ADA and Capital Programs Coordinator position was created, and I started in August of 2018. There are 5 sections to our transition plan: public right-of-way, facilities, parks, program services, activities, and board meetings, committees, policies and procedures, and our website. We have 20 years to complete our transition plan. That would be 2036. So the first section of our transition plan is public right-of-way. What is public right-of-way? In general, it's anywhere on the back of the sidewalk out into the street. Some areas are different. Every neighborhood, every intersection, every street has a different right-of-way, and that was all set up when the street was built a long time ago. So the accomplishments that we've done so far for the public right-of-way are, we've updated the Coppell standard details to match TxDOT and the Texas accessibility standards, as well as PROAG. I'll talk more about those later. For any project that's over $50,000, so that can be new construction or reconstruction, we are required to register with the state through the Texas Department of Licensing and Registration and have a registered accessibility look at the project, specialist look at the project. They do a plan review, and then they also do a final inspection. We were noticing that there was a lot of inconsistencies when we had different registered accessibility specialists look at our projects. Some of them were really stringent, some of them were not so much, so we really wanted more consistency with that. So we prefer to use Accessology and their team of Razes instead of smorgasbording. Obviously they were here for 9 months, they know our city very well. So we prefer to use them. It's not always the case. Sometimes engineers consult with different registered accessibility specialists, but that's been really helpful to us. Big accomplishment is, since 2016, 10% of the right-of-way violations that we had in the city have been eliminated. The budget for ADA, I don't have my own, that's a dream one day, but right now in the Public Works Department in right-of-way, we spend $350,000 a year on sidewalks, and then we also include in our large roadway projects like Freeport, Parkway, Beltline, any violations that exist there and any updates that we can do. So we count those as an ADA budget because we're making updates to them. Okay, so let's zoom in to accessible curb ramps. And we're going to talk about them from design to pedestrian use. There are 2 levels that help us to create the specs and the designs for our accessible curb ramps. At the national level, we have the Americans with Disabilities Act Accessibility Guidelines, or the ADA, same thing. We also have the Public Right-of-Way Accessibility Guidelines. The differences between these two, the ADA is all-encompassing. It's the physical world as well as policies, procedures, services, programs. PROAG is just right-of-way. It was created a few years ago by the U.S. Access Board in D.C. as kind of an update because there were some lacking items in the ADA with just public right-of-way. Each state in the United States can be more stringent than the national level. They can't be less stringent, but they can be more. And of course, Texas being special, we have our own. So does California. We're the only 2 states that have our own. So at the state level, we have the Texas Accessibility Standards, or TAS. These standards are construction law. So anytime we are reconstructing or we are doing new construction, again, over $50,000, we use these standards to help us to build things accessibly. And that's when the RAS rolls in and all of that as well. So it focuses on physical and vertical construction. The Texas Department of Transportation created pedestrian guidelines in 2018 that we also follow. Those ones are specific for right-of-way as well. So in Coppell, we follow TAS and TxDOT. We are the most stringent. We follow their specs to a T. So public right-of-way standards include all of these items. All of these items have specs, they have measurements, they have standards that we have to follow. Like I said, we're using TxDOT and TAS, which are the most stringent. Right-of-way is different in every neighborhood. Like I said before, every street, every intersection is different. So we have to make sure that all of the specs that apply to each of these pieces, sidewalks, ramps that include landings and slopes, street crossings, intersections, and pedestrian push buttons are included. So how do we make decisions on which ramp we're going to use? New construction, it's so easy, it's so nice. We have all the room we want, we get to decide where property lines are, we get to decide where street lights are, we get to decide where stop signs are. In reconstruction, in something that already exists, it's not so easy. We have lots of obstacles in our way. There's the available right-of-way, elevation of the yard. So if a residential yard is really high, we have to make sure as water flows down, it doesn't pool on that ramp or in that intersection at the corner. Street drainage, stop signs, traffic devices, fire hydrants, manholes, storm drain, light poles. Some of these we move, some of these we work around, some of these we move the ramp around them. Just depends on what they are and where they are. And then also the presence of a receiving ramp on the other side. We want to make sure if we're installing a ramp, we're sending a pedestrian to traverse across the street, that we're not sending them to a curb or something that they can't access. We have a lengthy construction process that we use that helps us to make sure there's lots of layers of inspections and approvals involved. There's lots of the design involved as well. The first part is the design. So an engineer is assigned to the project. Again, they have to register that project with the Texas Department of Licensing and Registration and have a registered accessibility specialist attached to it to review it. The RAS does a plan review in the beginning, and we get those as well as the engineer, and we make adjustments. Construction plans are reviewed by our departments, the engineer and the RAS. We are going to be having neighborhood meetings for reconstruction. We're going to be including ramps before and after of what we're going to be bringing and what accessibility we're going to be bringing to the table at our neighborhood meetings as an education piece. Once the plans are completed, approved, and stamped by the city engineer, then we're ready for construction. The Coppell construction inspectors and other Coppell departments like myself assess the project throughout. We make sure the contractors and subcontractors and everybody's on the same page with what is on the stamped plans. Once construction is complete, final inspections are prepared and they're approved by ourselves and by the registered accessibility specialist as well. So this process is lengthy, it's intentional, it is on purpose for a purpose. It's a process to make sure that we are designing and constructing these ramps to the best of our ability. We, like I said, we are required to have a RAS look at them, and not just myself, so we make sure a third party comes and does the plan review as well as looks at the ramps on site to make sure they're accessible and they're correct. So let's break down an accessible ramp. So there are 4 different pieces to an accessible ramp that are really important. First one is running slope and cross slope. The running slope of a ramp cannot be any more than 8.3%. And the cross slope cannot be any more than 2%. Running slope is the steepness of the ramp. Obviously you don't want to fly down a ramp. Cross slope is so that it's as flat as we can make it, but we can also have water to drain as well. Again, so that there's no water puddling or pooling. These slopes are set out for the mobility impaired to make sure that they can traverse the ramps effectively. Next step is landings. So we are required to have a landing at the top and the bottom of every ramp, 5 by 5, as flat as we can make it. These are also for mobility impaired and people who are blind or have low vision. It's got 2 purposes. First one is so they can change direction, depending on where they want to go. Also, it's a place for them to rest. If they've just come down a ramp or come up a ramp and they're pushing or pulling their own body weight, they might be tired. So it's a place of rest. Very important. The directional curbs on the accessible curb ramps are both for the mobility impaired and for blind or low vision. They are super important in making sure that citizens know which direction to travel when they're crossing a vehicular way. Individuals who are blind or have low vision are taught to tap the side of the curb, and it gives them the exact direction that they're supposed to traverse across the street. If the directional curbs are not there, they could traverse into the middle of the intersection. There's nothing stopping them from doing so. Same thing with the mobility impaired. You want to make sure your wheelchair is squared and you're crossing that intersection at the flattest space possible, not in the middle of the intersection. The truncated domes are the last piece. So they are at the edge of every ramp. In Coppell they're red, in some areas they're yellow. They're allowed to be red or yellow. But they are a tactical sign for someone who's blind or low vision that they are about to cross into a vehicular way. They're about to cross into traffic. So they're very important. These directional ramps are RAS approved. Their specs are from TxDOT and also from TAS. Each piece of these ramps ties into eliminating a safety concern as well as making sure that every type of disability has access to our streets. ProAg and TxDOT are using these types of ramps more often with all 4 of these pieces involved. Something we're going to be doing in the future is we're going to be staining these directional curves to make sure that they're visible to everyone. So in new construction, they will be stamped with an integral color. And in reconstruction, we will acid etch each one. Other cities in DFW that are already using these ramps, Frisco, Prosper, Plano, and Denton. As you can see in Frisco, this one was taken at El Dorado. There's a ped push button there. That's a really busy intersection. Prosper, same thing. You can see in the background, Plano and Denton. So there's a lot of cities wanting to make sure that they're using the most effective ramps that are accessible to everyone. This is a repeat that the resources that we used in order to design and implement these ramps are the Texas Department of Transportation, the Texas Accessibility Standards, and we've implemented both of those things into our standard details. We regularly review them and update our standard details as needed to make sure that we have the most updated information. I'm going to talk about the rest of our transition plan. I have a few more slides with the pieces of that, but I wanted to zoom out and pause for discussion, if there is.
That was amazing.
Mark?
This is really good info.
It's great information. I'm an architect, so I deal with this all the time. And let's talk about that flared curb ramp, which was shown as an exhibit in one of the emails we received as being acceptable at a corner intersection. That's only to be used under certain conditions, and most of the conditions we see at our corners will not allow that type of ramp to be used. So it's completely flush and curves down the whole thing. Is that correct?
The transition blend, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Correct, yes. So the transition blends are used when we, like I was talking about, with each intersection, each corner, the amount of right-of-way that we have can vary. We really only like to use those if it's so tight that we can't get the landing on the back side of an 8.3% ramp. Yeah, but they're not the best option because, like I said, there's nothing stopping an individual who's not able to see from traversing into the intersection.
Yeah, and I had a job where we had to take that curb ramp out and put in the directional ramps. Somehow our RAS missed that ramp, and when the inspector came out from the city, he said, hey, that doesn't work, it doesn't meet the standards.
Well, we have a good recommendation for RASs.
Yeah, we weren't using accessology.
Anybody? Back in 2016, I remember that the estimate for complying, well, I asked and no one said anything, so I went ahead.
Everybody saw it.
That used to happen to me.
Okay, John, go ahead. So back in 2016, the estimate for doing the compliance was estimated at $68 million across the city for the next 20 years. Has that number changed, and how much of that have we actually already implemented?
So for just right-of-way, I can go back and show you. It was 70 million, I think, was like the estimate, and we've done 7 million of that.
Oh, okay.
For just right-of-way. And you'll see as I keep going through, oh, I just pressed it again. As I keep going through, you'll see. Please go. There we go. Ah, that's good choice. You'll see, under accomplishments, I'll show you as we keep going how much we're doing. But yeah, we have 7 million of that 70 already completed
Okay, thank you.
for right away.
John?
Yeah.
Thank you. You said a little while ago that the flare design is not the best design. Does that mean that's also acceptable? That meets the requirement of ADA compliant?
It is acceptable. It is in TxDOT. It is acceptable. Like I said, it's kind of a last resort that we use if we don't have the right of way on the back end to have the full landing and the ramp on the outside.
That would be the preferred, sorry.
Yeah, no.
Direct, yeah, these accessible curb ramps would be the preferred.
So, okay, so I'm gonna go, I'm sure you know the plantation area. I actually went there and drove by and looked at the intersection. It seems like there's 3 or 4 different type of designs that actually implemented at different intersections. Explain that to me.
Why? Okay. So that probably had to do with whether there were utilities there, was there a stop sign there, was there a light pole there? Again, right of way, was it the elevation of the yard? On some of them, we have, it almost looks like a retaining wall up against the property line because the yard is so high, we don't want water and erosion, we don't want water pooling right there at that corner. So it is kind of hybrid. At every corner, we look and see how much space we have and what we can fit. Our first option is these accessible curb ramps. And then from there, depending on how much space we have to choose different ones.
Okay, and what kind of struck out was some of them actually had where the curb, where the sidewalk was coming in the curb, it actually had I guess a 9-inch or some height that kind of guides you around. But
If it's coming off of a ramp, was it coming?
it wasn't even coming off.
No, it was flat,
coming
okay.
from a sidewalk. So
From the
I'm just wondering, at that intersection, couldn't something like the flare design, that's not possible?
The transition blend is possible, it's just not the best option for including everyone and making sure they're accessible for everyone. For those who can see and then for those who can't.
Okay, because you talked about the flare design with the, I guess, what was the last one? If you go back to the four part that you laid out.
I know I'm going forward now. Oh, someone is doing it for me. These ones or keep going?
No, it was where you actually identify the four, right,
Yeah.
identify 4 parts of the,
That one's good.
yeah.
Oh,
Too far. This one.
Nope.
I'll stop doing it.
So this right here, the truncated domes, right?
Yes.
It's sufficient to allow the blinds and low vision to know that they're actually going to the edge.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering why that was not possible to implement in the same way in the residential area that we were talking about,
The transition blend?
Yeah.
So you're letting them know, I mean, they would feel, that transition blend, they would feel it with their feet, that they're crossing the vehicular path, they just don't know which way to go. It's a fan like this, they don't know, okay, if it's 90 degrees, I'm gonna cross the street here and there's a receiving ramp to the other side. Or at this 90 degrees, I'm gonna cross here. We wanna be the most direct we can.
But rather than having that, I guess, the directional curve just high like that, that could have been done with a flare design too, right?
You mean with the flares on either side of the ramp?
Right.
Yes, you could, it's not directional though. Those flares on either side of the ramp are in TxDOT and they are accessible. A lot of times therefore, when you have like a perpendicular crossing at the side of perpendicular to the road, they're not the greatest for a corner because a wheelchair could tip off and or someone could also still fall. So this is keeping them within that 5-foot ramp to cross the street at the most accessible spot at the street. Can we go to the very last slide really quick? I have an example of 2 more. So this one on the right, this is what you're talking about with the little flares on the side, okay. So this example is here, someone who is blind or has low vision is going to feel that truncated dome and walk, most likely walk straight. As you can see, the crosswalks are on either side of them.
Yeah.
They're not going to be able to see that they're walking in the middle of the intersection. So this is a good example of kind of what we are designing is we're making sure that they're walking at a 90-degree angle on both sides. So we're stopping them from doing something really dangerous. Because even with a head push button there, it's not going to tell them, move 2 degrees to the right, or move 2 degrees. It's not going to be able to see where they're going.
Mark?
So I'm going to direct this question to our counsel here. So if we have the real estate in the right of way to do directional ramps, but we decide to do the flare ramp on the right-hand side, and someone is dumped out into the street and there's an accident of some sort, are we liable because we did not put in those directional ramps? We are not. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I was actually wondering the same thing, because there's preferred, and I guess this is not the preferred, but it's still within the guidelines. And so I guess my question more is, well, I would prefer to go with whatever's a preferred, right? Because that provides more safety, accessibility and safety. But who makes that determination? Maybe that's what I'm looking for, as to which one you go with. Do you try the first preferred first, and if that doesn't work, then you go with the second?
Correct. Yeah, our goal is directional.
So for
ramps.
consistency, it's directional ramps.
That's our goal. And
Okay.
then sometimes, like you've seen at corners around town, sometimes we can't fit it, or it doesn't work.
Okay.
Or it's skewed. Sometimes the intersection is skewed. It's not totally 90 degrees. So we can't, it doesn't work.
Don?
Can you go back to one of your other slides? You mentioned, staining or coloring some of the,
But
can you
orange,
sort of
the red and
expand?
yellow.
What part is that? Well, the
Well,
red
the
and
staining,
yellow.
yeah.
Keep going back.
Because one of them was like edge staining and one was,
This one.
Yeah.
That one, yep.
so can you explain exactly the staining, what that's,
I can do my best.
okay.
I'll have some help if I need help. I have some phone a friend. But, so with new construction, we'll actually be able to stamp the concrete with that, they look like little bricks, and we'll actually, the concrete itself will be colored, and then with reconstruction, we're gonna actually stain the concrete, so it'll be a little different. They're both gonna be a reddish color.
And that's the curb, is that the part we're talking about, it will be stained? So go like one, is the next slide that shows the,
Can you go
oh,
on?
it showed so like, will part of this be, part of
Yes,
that
that
be stained?
inside triangle.
That the
Like
directional
this?
curve?
Like
Yeah.
this
Right.
part? Okay, so that'll be
The
stained.
inside. So in the stamped scenario, there wouldn't be grass or landscaping there, it would be that stamped kind of brick shape with that same.
So this piece right here, like the plantation, there are a few of them that piece is a very, very small piece that's sort of just stuck on the corner. And I'm sure that has to do with amount of space we had in the right of way. Because I noticed at Bethel School and Denton Tap, there is a similar corner, but that piece right on the corner is much larger, right? It's much easier to see. So like the areas in Plantation where we have the small areas, is there a way to stain those or make them more visible, I guess? They don't stand out, I guess, would be my concern.
And that's our hope, is when we do stain them, that's what they'll do, yes.
That it'll stand out for,
Correct.
since it's just such a small piece and there's no landscaping or anything there.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, thanks.
Yes.
Painted to be seen at nighttime also, maybe with,
As far as I know, it's just stained red.
Stained red.
just stained red, not.
Yeah, at night, I mean, reflective material is retroreflective, so it only shines when you hit it with a light.
Sure, but I mean, if,
But
someone's
stained
riding
red,
bike and-
I mean, most of our intersections have street
Street
lights at the corners, so staining them red will provide the contrast against the concrete for people that can see.
and if the corner doesn't have a street light,
We'll still stain it red.
not where it's reflective. I'm just concerned about some kids riding bike at night or even with the light, you know, with their light
I mean, if
shining.
it's dark, it's dark.
Bikes are
Yeah.
on the street, not sidewalk. That's my answer to
Well, kids.
that. I was a kid, I rode.
That's you.
You can see what kind of game.
Yeah, that's you.
And I will say, if there
You asked
are,
a
if there are
question.
street corners where we don't have street lights, then we need to inventory that, because that's our standard.
Because it's not required for ADA compliance, is it?
What's that?
The
The
lighting
lighting.
piece?
Lighting
Or
isn't gonna-
reflectiveness, not lighting, but I'm just saying the reflecting or
Yeah,
the
I don't think that
visibility.
is.
It's not part of the ADA.
Okay,
Right.
that's what I was just wondering.
To follow up on your question, if I knowingly create a dangerous situation, if I'm a city, and I don't warn, so if you went to, and you had the space to do the correct, highest and best, and you put in something less than it, you may have a duty to warn, which would require you to put some kind of audible to keep from creating an inherently dangerous situation. You have a duty to warn, you have a duty to make safe for liability purposes. So if you put a different surface at that intersection and create an inherently dangerous situation, and you could have done something less than that, then you may have a duty to warn. So, and I would think that we would need an audible signal.
Now, when we do this, this corner right here, where that little piece gets very small, are we at any risk of it being a trip hazard and a citizen suing the city?
No, and if you can see, if the whole purpose of putting that there is for blindness or low vision, and it meets acceptable standard for that, if you can see okay and you trip over it, that's on you.
That's true.
And it's painted. So you've done your duty to warn. We don't have a duty to make safe. Our liability starts when we fail to warn of a dangerous situation.
Thank you.
That's a good point, sorry, just real quick, that's a good point, because I've actually had people complain to me about these intersections for people who are on bikes, like,
Yep.
because
Yeah,
of their
people-
kids, right?
Bikers.
And on their, and really this isn't for biking compliance, this is for ADA compliance, and so we are complying with what we need at that intersection.
Correct.
Because they're biking and it's visible and they can see the
That's why
danger
new-
in front of them, I guess.
That's why new construction sidewalks wider, so that you
But I've
create
had
a
this
safer space
questions.
to put in the ADA compliant. It's when you have an existing that, you know, where the sidewalk's only 8 feet, 10 feet, instead of 15 feet, then that's why we have a problem. So you just have less space.
We are gonna hear this again out in the.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Well, I have a good question. I know you have more to cover, but as part of your presentation, either out there and here, will you cover as to where we are as a city, like for people who are watching, just as to, are we fully compliant? Are we still working on it? Where are we? Because I know that project's been in conversation years.
The transition plan itself?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, so each section that I go through, each of those 5, I'll tell you kind of where
Okay.
we are and how far we are in completing it.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes, yes. Any other questions or?
Yeah, I have one more.
Okay.
John?
Thank you.
See, it helps when you ask.
Raising hands, not saying. So, I know you said flare is not the best, but it is still compliant with the ADA requirement. How many other cities do you know that actually stayed away from flare and went with the designs that we're implementing right now in the residential area? I'm more concerned about the residential because, you know, more foot traffic over there that I'm thinking, right? So do you have an idea as to how many other cities are actually implementing current design that we have over the flare design?
Don't know other cities. What I do know is ProWag, which is at the national level, it's the right-of-way standards. They are doing away with the transition blend and the flares. They're still included right now, but as it becomes, it's a guideline right now, as it becomes a standard, they're using more of the directional curbs. They're doing away with those. Except for certain areas, like I said, when you're talking about like a perpendicular ramp to a street or something. But for the most part, they're doing away with them. Okay, does this work, or do I just need to?
I think.
Okay, we'll try.
Yes, I
Okay, this is the next one. So we're gonna zoom back in to the transition plan. So the second section is facilities and parks. So we wanna make sure when we're welcoming citizens to our facilities and our parks and all of our special events that they're accessible. Accomplishments we have so far are that we've created a group called the ADA Facilities Parks Plan. We meet every January and August to go over the violations in the facilities and the parks, to bundle them together and to eliminate them. So that's at the 1 and 5 year budget marks. And the individuals in that group are from every department that are in charge of or help to coordinate their budget. We are using creative solutions with those violations. There's been a few where Accessology said, you should rip down that wall and take out the door frame. Well, we consulted with them and figured out it was actually the latch and the closer on the door, not so much the walls. So we replaced the latch and the closer, violation done, city money saved, yay. So we're doing that as we go. We're bundling projects together as well. Second piece is, again, the consistency of the registered accessibility specialist, even in the facility projects. So when the Corps does a remodel of the front or the bridge, we make sure that we've got consistent eyeballs on it. They're helping us to assess that. We've created ADA floor plans. They're kind of like a fire escape route, but it helps our part-time employees or employees that are maybe don't know who I am or not here Monday through Friday 8 to 5 to see the accessible features in their building. So if a patron comes up and asks them a question, they know exactly where to point them. So 27% of the violations for facilities have been eliminated, and 9% of the violations for parks have been eliminated. In our budget for facilities, we have $140,000 a year that we use. We have $5,000 a year that we use in utilities. Right now it's going to be used at the pump station, Village Parkway pump station, that front area. And then, like I said, departments budget for their own facilities, for their projects, and we help them out. Facilities helps them out if there's stuff that they can do as well.
Corey, I'm gonna interrupt you just because it's 7:29.
Yeah, we got it.
And
Okay.
you're gonna be doing the presentation out front as well, so.
Thank you so much. That's awesome. Thank you.
She's on a roll.
We're gonna pull, item D is actually on consent agenda, so we will hear that out during the regular session. And our workforce transit plan. Ms. Hurley, there you are. What did, help, we've got to get out there now. How long is that one gonna take?
I can make it 10 minutes.
We'll defer that one to the August 9th meeting.
Okay.
All right, we are at the end of the work session. The time is 7:30 p.m. We are adjourned and move into this council chambers for the regular session.
Are we gonna hear about the water conversation before we vote?
Thank you.
We seem to be looking for Councilmember Long. Whoa. We're trying very hard not to do that.
You still got that echo?
Yeah, big time. Good afternoon. The time is 7:37 p.m. We do have a quorum present. We're reconvening into the regular session of the Coppell City Council meeting. A reminder, persons wishing to speak during our citizens' appearance or during any public hearing must sign the appropriate register outside the council chambers. Tonight, we have Council Member Don Carroll will give our invocation, and then please remain standing while we recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this city that you have allowed us to create. We thank you for the relationships that have been forged in this city. We thank you for our city staff and the diligence they give in taking care of the city, taking care of the citizens. Father, we just ask your blessings, your continued blessings on Coppell, and we ask specifically that you will bless the meeting tonight. We ask that there will be a peace and calm over this meeting setting, that bold and strong discussions can be had. Father, we just thank you for giving us this environment to share our lives with each other. Bless our time this evening. Thank you for always taking care of us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Item number 6 is our citizens' appearance. Persons wishing to speak on any matter other than an item scheduled on our agenda may list their name and residence on the list outside the council chambers. Each speaker must state his or her name. Presentations during the citizen appearance are limited to 2 minutes each. However, your time may be extended by an additional 2 minutes with the approval of the majority of the council. Those persons signed up to speak shall be called upon the order that they signed up. No personal attacks by any member shall be made against any member of the council, the mayor, individual, group, or corporation. Tonight we have one person that has signed to speak, Ms. Barbara Bailey. Barbara? Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Barbara Bailey, 232 Plantation Drive, Coppell, Texas, 75019. I am here to speak about those curbs, sidewalk curbs that were put along Plantation. They are very dangerous, and I realize that they make ADA compliance, but they are not even, according to TxDOT, I'll read to you right from the TxDOT thing. Provide flare sides where pedestrian circulation path crosses the curb ramp. Flared sides shall be sloped at a 10% minimum, measured parallel to the curb. Returned curbs, which is what y'all put in, may only be used where pedestrians would not normally walk across the ramp, either because of an adjacent surface is planted, substantially obstructed, or otherwise protected. Now, this is TxDOT. Here's the 4-page document of TxDOT. When I was listening to that presentation inside just a few minutes ago, there was a lot of confusion about 2 items. One was direction. Now, they want to change from a diagonal direction, which puts you out in the middle of the intersection, to a perpendicular direction, which takes you across the street. That's separate from the design of what the ADA requires. And right here on page 4, I thought I could show stuff, but obviously I can't. On page 4 of the PED 18, which is the TxDOT most recent publication, there are 3 designs right here. One is for a skewed intersection, small, and one is skewed intersection, large, and one is normal intersection with a small radius. They are not mutual. There's nothing about the design that is put in that has anything to do with the direction, not a thing. And here are, I realize you can't see that, here, I blew it up as big as I could on my computer. Here is a flared design that is totally directional at a corner. Here's another picture of a flared design that is at a corner.
Bailey.
No one on a bike is going to get killed
Just a
with
moment.
head injury with this one.
You've exceeded your 2 minutes. Counsel, you willing to give her an additional 2 minutes?
Yes.
All right.
I am so upset about this, I cannot tell you, because somebody is really going to get hurt. I don't care if you put sparkles on these things. People are going to walk into them. People start walking in the street, riding their bikes in the street. When I asked originally about why they designed those, what you guys called these curbs, they're so dangerous. I said no bike rider can traverse that. And I was told by several city employees that bikes weren't allowed on the city sidewalks, so therefore it didn't matter. But then I find out later that is not true. And so when they were designed, the people involved in all this were not even designing for bikes. But we have a lot of kids. We have people that ride bikes all over the place. And I had a skull fracture when I was young and a traumatic head injury. And why am I here? Because you're going to really hurt someone with these things. Less than 1% of the population is blind. Less than 4% is moderate to severe visual impairment, because I've looked all these statistics up. And I am all for helping that. My great aunt used to have severe visual impairment. And the thing she was upset about most were curbs. And what do? You guys put these 8 to 9 inch curbs all over the place for people to trip on. So when you go straight, you run into this. Now, you can make a directional flared corner. And in fact, if you look at all the TxDOT publications, that is what they have there. They don't have what we have. They don't have that in their publication. It's not even in there. What you guys installed was some modification from all kinds of things. And the other thing that's not being considered here is the fact that what is good in a parking lot for a stadium that's a commercial enterprise or
Ms.
a commercial
Bailey,
situation
your time is up.
is not the same thing as kids riding their bike around a neighborhood and going to school. And I think you should fix it before you hurt somebody. I really do. And so does pretty much everybody else.
Thank you very much
Thanks.
for your comments. Item number 8 is our consent agenda. The consent agenda is routine in nature and generally enacted in one motion. These items have been previously approved through the budget or passed. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped number 7. I'm having trouble counting tonight. Item number 7 is a presentation regarding the ADA transition plan and accessible curb ramp designs by Ms. Corey Allen. Corey.
It's this again? Good evening, Council. My name is Corey Allen. I am the ADA and Capital Programs Coordinator for the City of Coppell. 50% of my job is for ADA programs, and the other 50%, it's not on. Hello. Can you turn it up? Is it on now? Okay. I'll start over. Hi, I'm Corey Allen. I'm the ADA and Capital Programs Coordinator for the City of Coppell. 50% of my job is for our ADA program, and the other 50% is for capital assets in our Public Works Department. I'm a member of the Texas Governor's Committee on People with Disabilities, and I am also a chapter officer in the DFW chapter of Little People of America. What is the ADA? It stands for the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's a civil rights law that was signed by President George H.W. Bush on July 26, 1990, which is 32 years ago today, so happy birthday to the ADA. It requires private and public entities to be accessible. So in Coppell, that applies to both employees and to citizens. So the history of our ADA transition plan. What is a transition plan? It's basically a comprehensive plan that goes through a city or municipality or county and tells them how they can be more compliant. It covers every piece of a city or municipality. In 2015, we approached Accessology based out of McKinney to help us to create our transition plan. In 2016, it was created. It took them 9 months. And in 2017, our Public Works Department realized after weighing it, and it was 11 pounds, that it was going to have to be managed by someone new that was not already in the department. And that's when the ADA and Capital Programs Coordinator position was created. There are 5 sections to our transition plan: public right-of-way, facilities and parks, programs, services, activities, and board meetings, committees, policies and procedures, and our website. We have 20 years to complete our ADA transition plan, which would be 2036. The first section is public right-of-way. So what is public right-of-way in general? It's from the back of the sidewalk out into the street. Every neighborhood, every intersection is different, but that's the generic spec of that. What are the accomplishments that we've done in the public right-of-way for our transition plan? We've updated our own Coppell standard construction details to match TxDOT and PROAG, the most updated versions of right-of-way standards. And we've also created more consistency with the registered accessibility specialists from the state that look at our projects and inspect them. So before, there was a lot of inconsistency. We were getting different engineers that were hiring different registered accessibility specialists. We prefer to use the RAS team from Accessology. They were here for 9 months. They know our city very well. And the exciting part is 10% of the right-of-way violations have been eliminated. So let's zoom into accessible curb ramps for a second. There are 2 different levels of standards that we follow. So the Americans with Disabilities Act Accessibility Guidelines, or the ADA, is at the national level. It's all-inclusive. It includes physical things and also policies, procedures. The PROAG, or Public Right-of-Way Accessibility Guidelines, was created by the U.S. Access Board a few years ago. It just focuses on the public right-of-way. And at the state level, we have the Texas Accessibility Standards and the Texas Department of Transportation Pedestrian Guidelines 2018. Every state can be more stringent than the national level, not less stringent. So Texas, of course, being as special as it is, has its own standards, as well as California. The Texas accessibility standards are construction law. So anytime we do any type of reconstruction or new construction over 50,000, that's when we're instructed to use these. They're mostly for vertical construction. They do include some parking lot standards. The Texas Department of Transportation Pedestrian Guidelines is just for the right-of-way. So these are all of the pieces that fall into the public right-of-way that have standards that we have to abide by. Sidewalks, ramps, including their landings and slopes, street crossings, intersections, and pedestrian push buttons. So like I said, each of these have their own spec standards and measurements that we have to follow. How do we decide which ramp to use? So in new construction, it's really easy. We have lots of freedom. We have the perfect amount of right-of-way, perfect amount of sidewalk. The property lines are great. They give us lots of space. In reconstruction, it's a little bit different. We have to hybrid and create each ramp at each corner based on the space that we have and what will fit. So available right-of-way, elevation of the yard, making sure there's no erosion, making sure there's no water pooling on the ramps or the sidewalk, street drainage, stop signs, traffic devices, fire hydrants, manholes, storm drains, light poles. Sometimes we move these items, sometimes we move around these items. And then the last but not least, the presence of a receiving ramp on the other side. We want to make sure if we're sending someone across the street that there's a receiving ramp on the other side and they can traverse effectively. The process that we go through is really elaborate and very intentional on how we design and construct each of these corners. So we have an engineer that's assigned to the project. We register it with the Texas Department of Licensing and Registration and have a registered accessibility specialist assigned to it to review the project both in plan review and in construction. Construction plans are reviewed by Coppell departments, the engineer, and also the registered accessibility specialist. We are going to be having featured ramp, new and old, what things will look like new and old, and our neighborhood meetings for reconstruction processes to make sure that everybody is aware of what the new standards will be and what they will look like. Once the plans are completed and approved, they're stamped by the City of Coppell engineer and we're ready for construction. The construction inspectors and other departments assess the project throughout, like myself and our construction inspectors, and then once we think it's complete, final inspections are done and prepared, and they're approved by ourselves and also by a third-party registered accessibility specialist. That is why I am not the RAS for the city. We want to make sure we have a third party looking at these that is going to help us to approve them and make them the most accessible. The breakdown of an accessible curb ramp. So there's 4 major pieces that are included in an accessible curb ramp that help those with mobility impairments and also who are blind and have low vision. So the running slope and the cross slope. Running slope has to be under 8.3% and the cross slope has to be under 2%. We want to make sure someone is not flying down a ramp or they're having to really struggle to get up a ramp. We want to make sure with the cross slope that it's as flat as we can make it where water will also still drain. The landing at the top and the bottom of every ramp has to be as flat as it can be, has to be 5 by 5. That is for 2 reasons. The first one is so that pedestrian can decide which direction they might want to change direction. They can decide where they want to go. Also, it's a resting place. If they just come up or down a ramp, they need time to rest. Directional curbs that are in these accessible curb ramps are really important for those who are mobility impaired and also those who are blind or have low vision. It helps guide them. They use their walking cane to feel the direction of the curb and the direction of travel. So if you do not have these directional curbs in place and you have access to the entire intersection, you could potentially have a pedestrian that would traverse in the middle of the intersection. Nothing would be there to stop them. Truncated domes are the last piece. In Coppell, they're red. In other areas, they're yellow. They are a tactical sign for those who are blind or have low vision to feel that they're going to cross into a vehicular way. So they're really, really important. If you take away any of these items, you are not guaranteeing safety and you're not guaranteeing full accessibility of that intersection. ProWag and TxDOT are both using these directional curb ramps. Something we're going to be doing in the future is staining these directional curbs. So with new construction, they'll be stamped with an integral color. With reconstruction, there will be an acid etch stain to make them more visible to everyone. Other cities in DFW that are using these ramps, Frisco, Prosper, Plano, and Denton. As I mentioned before, with ProWag, a lot of the flared ramps or the transition blend are going away, and they're using these ramps more and more. The resources that we used, again, Texas Department of Transportation, PED 18, the Texas Accessibility Standards. We take both of these, the most updated versions of them, and update our standard details regularly to stay up to date. The second section of our transition plan is facilities and parks. So we want to make sure our facilities and our parks are accessible to encourage citizens to come visit. Some of our accomplishments are that we've created a group called the ADA Facilities Parks Plan. We meet every January and August to go over the violations in those facilities and parks. We budget for them. The group of individuals that meets is either in charge of or helps to coordinate that department budget. So we bundle the projects together. We bundle them and budget them to be eliminated. Again, 27% of the violations for facilities have been eliminated so far, and 9% of the violations for parks have been eliminated. The third item in our transition plan is programs, services, activities, and boards, committees, and meetings. So we want to make sure the programs and services that we offer in the city have accommodations. We're already set up with vendors to make sure that all of our citizens can attend effectively. We've created a group called the ADA Liaison Advocates. They are appointed in every facility and department, and they're the eyes and the ears of the ADA for the city. I am a Monday through Friday 8 to 5 employee, and I have not figured out a way to clone myself. So they help a lot with nights and weekends when we have citizens that have requests or have concerns. So they relay that information back to me, and we make sure we take care of them. We have assistive listening devices in all of our city facilities where we are asking people to gather. The ES department did training on those listening devices already with us. In any area where we have a public computer, senior center, utility billing, community development, library, if we're offering a public computer, it has accessible programs already on it. And we have also done training on those accessible programs with our ADA liaisons. We have 3 ADA vendors that we use here in the city for sign language interpretation, CART transcription, the assistive listening devices, as well as Braille, if somebody needs something in large print or different colors. Policies and procedures is the 4th item in our transition plan. Our focus is to create notices and also processes for our employees that when someone does ask for an accommodation, we're ready to go. Accomplishments are we've already have 5 notices in the city. They're for program services, the Art Center, printed materials, rentals and reservations, and workout classes. The last accomplishment, the big piece, is a partnership with Employee Experience Department to make sure our claims process, as well as the grievance process, which is required of us to have a process through the ADA, and also mitigating risk, making sure that all of those, the workflow of those pieces is seamless with if it's an employee that's filing a grievance or if it's a citizen, and how we work together to make sure they're accommodated. The last piece is our website. That is usually the first exposure that patrons have to the city of Coppell. It was my first exposure to the city. So we want to make sure if they're looking at the website that it's accessible, that it's inviting to them. So we have created an accessible Coppell webpage that has my information, our grievance process, information about our transition plan, our ADA vendors, and other accessible information for them. We connected the ADA liaisons to the website marketing team to make sure when we are uploading PDFs or Word documents that we're doing it and they're accessible while we're doing it instead of on the back end. We have 2 programs that we use on a consistent basis. Civic Plus has a lot of accessible features. That's our website, the new website itself. They have a lot of accessible features that we use. The outside links open to a new page, and alternative text is required on all images. And then Cydio does a routine web scan for us. For the communications department, it helps them with broken pages or blank pages or things like that. And with the accessibility features, it helps us to see if we have PDFs or Word documents that are not accessible. Also helps us to see if we have a sentence that has a link in it that a screen reader cannot read. It will flag that and we can fix it. The last but not least, the little purple person in the bottom left corner of our website is part of Cydio. It's a great feature that we have now. If you hover over it, it brings up a list of accommodations that you can apply to the website. When you click on one, it applies to the whole website as you experience it. Coppell is a front runner when it comes to having a transition plan, being accessible, being ADA compliant, and trying to always, how can we make it better? How can we make it better? How can we make it better? Because of this, we've been asked to do a lot of outreach and training. In 2019, we presented at the Bike Path Group for the North Central Texas Council of Governments. In April of 2021, we presented the Houston-Galveston Area Council, which is the Houston version of COG. In March of 2022, we had an ADA class here internally at our Coppell Service Institute. We just completed our ADA roadshows, which is where myself and the ADA liaisons went to different departments and talked about the ADA and how it applies to employees and citizens. And futuristically, we will be going to UT Tyler this October to talk about what we're doing. We go above and beyond. That is across Coppell. It's across the board. But we prioritize accessibility here, and because of this, cities all over Texas are asking us what we're doing and how we did it. Accessology even uses us as a reference, which is awesome. This is my contact information, and that is also the link to our accessible Coppell page if you'd like to go visit. If you Google it, it will come up so you can access it there. Does anybody have any questions?
Questions, council? Councilmember John.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Allen. Just a question on moving forward. Is it likely that from this point on, that if there was a construction in any other residential area for the road, the corner, sidewalk corners will be what we currently have at the plantation? Is that safe to say?
That's our first choice. They will be directional and accessible, yes. If we have the right-of-way, yes.
Okay.
And they will be, those curbs will be stained, like I mentioned as well.
And do we get any input, or do we have any, I guess, discussion with residents before we actually implement those type of corners?
So in the neighborhood meetings that we have before we begin construction, we're going to be bringing before and after pictures to show. The construction plans are always available, but we are going to be making a point of that when we meet with at the neighborhood meetings to show before and after pictures.
And was that done at the plantation and other locations?
We did have a neighborhood meeting. I don't believe ramps were a full section of the meeting, but we are going to be doing that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Matthew.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I have a question for Bob.
Yes.
Is it legal to ride the bicycle on a sidewalk in city of Coppell?
Yes, for children.
So,
But the transportation code recognizes that bicycles are vehicles, vehicles belong on the street.
so this ADA compliance with the ramp that we are doing, since kids are riding bicycles on the sidewalk, do we need to be careful about anything?
Well, I think that that's why you're going to delineate them with paint so that they stand out. So we assume that children that ride bicycles would be able to see the obstacle and therefore avoid it.
Yeah, what I was trying to get is any liability for the city?
No.
Okay, thank you.
It's part of the design. It's the ADA compliant design, so there would not be any liability. If we left a box in the middle of the sidewalk and we knew about it and we didn't remove it or warn of the danger, or we were doing repair work on the sidewalk and it was excavated, that's why they put up the cones and the warning devices. So since this is part of the design, there would not be liability for that. Mm-hmm.
Corey, in the 2016 ADA work plan or development plan, I can't remember what we called it, that was the estimate to complete that was about $70 million, and we have 20 years to complete that. I know that we had put together a schedule on what it was going to take to meet that schedule. You know, we're 6 years into that. How are we looking so far?
We're 7 million in. We're 7 million complete, I guess. And we are working, like I said, we're also evolving the plan when we work with departments and facilities at their 1 year and 5 year plan and make sure the ADA violations are more of a priority. It's hard when they have other projects that they're already working on, so I'm the squeaky wheel that's getting the grease.
Okay, I just don't want to come up in year 17 or 18 and realize that we've got $35 million left to go, so.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you. Councilmember John.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one more question. Earlier, we talked about how flare design, the curb design, it does comply and meets the ADA requirement, but we chose to pick this design. And can you tell me again, who made that decision?
When we put the plans together for design, it would have been engineer, Coppell departments, myself, project managers. The registered accessibility specialist would have done a plan review on those plans and approved them. So there were lots of layers involved.
And at that time,
design.
I realize we're trying to be ADA compliant, but at that time, were the discussion about how that would impact the residents, maybe possibly kids riding bike, were those also discussed?
Was not at that neighborhood meeting, so I don't think that topic specifically was brought up. but the plans are available.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Councilmember Hinojosa Smith.
First of all, thank you so much for the presentation and the level of detail. I think this is really important, and especially for, not just for us, but just for those who are watching. My question is around when we are building either new subdivisions, right, or we are going through and looking at our sidewalks and our intersections. What are we required to do and to make sure is, how can I say this? What do we need to make sure we're compliant with, right, across the board, right? You're thinking about every single way that a sidewalk can be used, but from a safety perspective, what as a city are we required to do? I'm not trying to go, I don't want to go into the legal, I don't know if I'm going to the legal aspect, so maybe this is for you and Bob, but when you're looking at it and you're like, all these different people are involved, what is our utmost responsibility as a city to make sure our intersections are compliant with?
I would say safety is the first thing.
Okay.
But even below that, yes, there are, I guess, different goggles. Mine are just ADA.
Right.
But for sidewalks, it's that they're wide enough, that they're flat enough. For intersections, it's that they're safe, you can cross. They're flat enough if we're talking about landings and not a ramp. It's to make sure that the street crossing is also just as flat. So after they get off of the ramp, that they're not having to struggle to traverse across the street.
Right.
So for me, ADA is the biggest concern, but there's lots of other pieces that go into it as well.
And then maybe the other piece to that too, because I can understand all the different parts to this, right? I think there's, again, we've got people who walk, people who run, we've got people who are visually impaired, we have to think of all of those different pieces. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but we want as much consistency across the board, right?
We would love that, yes.
Right.
New construction is so fun because it can be consistent, yes.
Agreed, but depending on kind of what the area is in our city, could we be potentially doing something different? I think maybe to Councilmember John June's question, right, of the standpoint of, could we look at potentially having consistency in residential versus busier streets versus other parts of the city and still have consistency and safety as our utmost priority?
Yes, one of the ideas that we have that we're actually working on in the capital programs subdivision is basing the ramp design that we create on the right-of-way space. So if in a perfect world, you'd have 7 feet of right-of-way gets ramp 1, 10 feet of right-of-way gets ramp 2, 12 feet of right-of-way. So it's not cut and paste, but it's kind of cut and paste just based on the measurement of the right-of-way we had, and we know of what we know we can fit into that space. So that is something that we're brainstorming and thinking through, not only for our contractors to make it, and engineers to kind of make it easier for them, but also our residents as well.
Gotcha, okay, thank you.
Council, any other questions? Councilmember Hill.
Ms. Allen, I just want to thank you for your presentation. It's important that we have this level of expertise in the city, as well as third-party consultants, making sure that we're in full compliance with ADA, and I'll leave those decisions up to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Council? Corey, we appreciate your passion, and thank you for your presentation. We apologize for making you do this twice tonight.
That's okay. I like talking.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, now, item number 8 is the consent agenda. Consent agenda is routine in nature and generally enacted in one motion. These items have been previously approved through budget or past council actions. Any item may be pulled and considered separately. Full descriptions are available on the screen. We have asked that item 8C be addressed separately, so I'm going to call Mr. Kent Collins up and let him make his presentation on something that's facing all of us right now.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I give a little bit of an update about 3 topics related to water. And I do love water, but I'll acknowledge I probably don't love it as much as Kim Tien loves water. So I'll do my best, show my enthusiasm here. So real quick, status update on where we are with water demands. I know you've been getting regular updates on kind of our daily pumping and where we are. And just a little context around that, the city contractually can take up to 18.5 million gallons per day from Dallas Water Utilities, who is our treated water supplier. We have the single point of take at Village Parkway. And we are really trying to guard against taking additional water from Dallas Water Utilities. Part of the reason is another 1 million gallon increase is about a $320,000 expense to the water system, and that locks us in for 5 years. Just a real quick explanation, our contract has a 5-year look back. So if we wanted to reduce our water demand, we would have to show that in the last 5 years we had not used more than the new reduced demand on any given day. So if we take another 500,000 or 1 million gallons, we're 5 years down the road before we can have that look back and see if we've used more water in order to reduce that. So hopefully that explains that. Operationally, we need to be able to fill our tanks every day. So we're monitoring our usage around that as well. And I will say that as part of our contract, we have to send to Dallas Water Utilities every few years our projected demands. And our projected demand, in fairness, this year shows us at 19 million gallons per day, and at 20 million gallons per day in 2026. With the changes in water fixtures and toilets and even irrigation heads now, I don't know if we'll be at 20 million gallons per day in 2026, but it's something we'll be watching. In the meantime, we are communicating daily, or almost daily, if not daily, Hannah's group, to manage that demand. So we're asking our residents, our simplified message a couple of weeks ago was, reduce demand by 20% or 1 day. So if you're watering more than 2 days per week, cut it back to 2 days per week. If use your irrigation controller to reduce the demand by 20%. And I will say the city has done what we've asked our residents to do. We've been pulling meter data for all the city's meters, and we have over the last 2 weeks reduced the city's water consumption significantly. So we've exceeded that 20% reduction looking at the city's meters. So we are doing what we're asking our customers to do. The graphic just shows the 90%, that green line, that's the threshold. If we hit that, the 90% of the 18.5 million gallons, that's 16.65 million gallons per day. If we hit that threshold or exceed it 5 days straight, it triggers our phase 2 restrictions, which is you could water 3 days per week. And I'll get into what that looks like in a future slide. If we hit 95% of the 18.5 million gallons per day for 5 days straight, that triggers phase 3. Now you're down to watering 2 days per week. If we go to phase 2, we're down to 1 day per week. If we go to 5 days, it's essential watering only. So that's a water emergency stage. So just to kind of give you an idea of what we've been managing against. Over the last few weeks, we've hit 4 days consecutive on at least twice. And then on that 5th day, we dropped below the 16.65. So that's why the communication is important, just to remind people, if you've reduced, keep reducing. We're not asking you to go, 30%. We're just asking you to maintain that level. So I know there's been some chatter out there about, well, how much more do I have to reduce? Well, if you've done what we've asked you, just keep doing that. That's what we're asking at this point. Drought contingency and conservation ordinance. I mentioned the stage 2 and the stage 3. We're still in stage 1. So that basically means no watering between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. every day. And we are driving around watching for those types of violations, warning people, giving them notices, hey, watering isn't allowed during the day. What our current, and I'll just talk about the triggers again. If we hit that 90% threshold for 5 days straight, it triggers phase 2. Phase 2 is 3 days per week watering, limited. Okay. If you go to stage 3, it's 2 days per week. Stage 4, 1 day. Stage 5, essential water only. I say that because when you go to those triggers and those actions or requirements, the way our current ordinance is designed, the scheme is based on where you're located in the city. So for residential customers specifically, if you're north of Sandy Lake Road, you would be able to water on a certain 3 days per week. If you're south of Sandy Lake Road, you would be able to water on a different 3 days per week, right? Our concern is, and I think that scheme was put in place for ease of monitoring and enforcement. Our concern is it's not necessarily the easiest to understand. Some people may not know, am I north or south of Sandy Lake Road? It's not consistent with what most cities do. So what we're proposing in the amendment to the Drought Contingency and Conservation Ordinance is that we go to an odd-even address scheme. So anyone can walk out to their curb or walk out front and look at their house number if you don't know your address. If your address ends in 0, 2, 4, 6, or 8, you're going to have a certain 3 days or 2 days or 1 day that you can water. If it's 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, it's a different scheme, right? So different days to water on. So easy to understand, compliance, we think, and that ultimately what we want is cooperation and compliance. We're not out there trying to write tickets and do heavy enforcement. I think even in stage 1, we've been working with code to just issue a few warnings on people where we've put notices out over and over and just kind of get those types of notices and compliance. That's all we're looking for is the cooperation. So really that's the ordinance change, is just going from the north-south scheme to the odd-even address scheme. And I guess I won't assume that all irrigation controllers can do it, select the days of week, but most can nowadays. The last topic is an update on our water system redundancy project. I mentioned we've sold $10 million for this project in bonds so far over the last 2 bond sales. The history on this, the city had for probably 2 decades or more, had plans to build a second pump station, and we actually started the initial schematic design on that second pump station. We got an initial cost estimate, and it was somewhere between $17 and $20 million. So we said, wait a minute, what are the things we're trying to solve with this pump station? What are our system risks? And we came back to council and said we would like to pursue a different course of action where we're actually targeting those system risks. One of them being, can we take portions of Village Parkway Pump Station down during low demand times so we can do major maintenance and rehab to the pump station. We only have one source and one feed of treated water from Dallas Water Utilities. If we lose that feed, we're out of water in fairly short order. And we needed to identify emergency sources of water, not on an ongoing basis, but if we were to lose that feed, can we keep our system up and pressurized? So we've been pursuing two basic projects. One is improvements to Village Parkway Pump Station. That's the agenda item, the consent agenda item, so that we can get the design finished and bid out. Our hope is that we have it bid out and awarded this fall or winter so we can start construction on it this year. The other target is to create emergency interconnects between our water system and the Louisville and Grapevine water systems. And I will say that Irving and the city of Dallas are also working on an interconnect project that would help our emergency flows. So we're working 3 prongs to try to solve those system weaknesses. The interconnects, we're looking at two locations in Louisville and 2 locations in Grapevine. And we're at the point where both sides are reviewing interlocal agreements. We hope to bring those to council here in the next couple of months, as well as design contracts for those interconnects to actually get them designed. So as soon as we have the ILAs in place, we can go to construction. So that's really the update on that project. It's been we've been working on this for a couple of years. As you might imagine, all the urgency is on our side on this project, and just getting the attention and working through that with our neighbors is what we've been working on. Next steps, the design amendment for VP, Village Parkway is on for tonight. Ordinance change is on tonight. We'll have the finished design and award the VP work later this year. ILAs with Louisville and Grapevine, design of the interconnects, and construction of the interconnects. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks for your comments. Council? Oh, Councilmember Carroll.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Collins, for the updates on all the different things. Real quick, I know you said we haven't been out writing tickets or anything for water violations and everything like that. Do we have any kind of process where we actually contact? I'm concerned about some areas that may be sprinkling during the day that may be more HOA owned. They may not be residential. Do we have a communication plan directly with HOAs to make sure that their management companies are adjusting sprinklers as need be?
Early on in our communication strategy, we sent emails directly to all of the HOAs asking them to cut back the 1 day per week, 20%. So we have hit those HOAs. If there's specific areas, and I know our water quality team, they're actually driving around. Our public works crews are keeping their eyes open. I know code enforcement is now watching for people watering during the day. But if there's something that, if somebody sees an area or an irrigation system that's on during the day, let us know, and we'll reach out to them. Yeah.
A couple of other things. So back on the original part of your presentation, you talked about 19 million gallons a day is what you're projecting at the moment. So what happens if we go over the 18.5? I know that's our limit that what we buy from Dallas, but if we're projecting 19, I guess I'm trying to reconcile if by chance we hit 19 or something at some point. I mean, what are the consequences? What happens? Do we automatically have to buy another million gallons or what?
Yes.
Okay, so that's
simply, I mean, yes, I'm sorry, that was a very short answer to a good question. Process-wise, we actually need to give DWU notice.
Okay.
So far, we've stayed under that 18 million gallon per day. I can tell you a few years ago, we were up in the 18.3, 18.4s, but we really contractually, we need to provide them notice, let them know we're going to need to take more water, and prepare them and actually get a response and approval to take more water from DWU. But that would trigger the increase in demand as well as the increased demand charge. As you might know, we have a demand charge and a volume charge. The demand is that reserve, right? So we would be charged for whether it was 19 or $19.5 million going forward for the next, 19.5 million gallons. That demand charge, we get charged whether we use that or not.
Okay.
The volume charge is what we actually use and sell.
Okay, so once again, the 19, if we're projecting 19, and I think you even said 20 by 2026 or something,
Correct.
And I know you mentioned water equipment and everything may improve where we don't need that much by 2026, but I guess what triggers, when do we start buying more from Dallas? I mean, if we were going to need 19 or 19 and a half in the next 2 years, how does that process work? When do we start buying more from them? I mean, how are we going to decide that?
Well, that is why we're managing against that.
Okay.
Is we are trying to keep our
Keep it
max
under.
in that 18 million gallon range, so that we don't get close enough where we think we need to talk to DWU about requesting additional water. That's why we're communicating heavily, asking for that cooperation. The 19 is a planning number, so it is kind of based on, typical growth, typical increase in irrigation, those kinds of things. So it's a planning number. We're required to send them those numbers. It's for their use. But, we have the ability to manage against taking that additional water.
And just confirming one other number that you said earlier, if we did go to 19 and a half, that's another, $320,000 that we would basically, from now on, that's what we would, our water costs would go up by $320,000.
At least for 5 years, unless
Okay.
we were able to bring that number back down.
Right. Okay,
Yes.
thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem Matthew.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. A question for you. You mentioned the city's facilities are also complying with the 20% reduction in water.
Yes.
Do we have any well water?
We do. We irrigate Wagon Wheel Park with a well with groundwater.
What about Andrew Brown East, West?
We do not. We buy water from DWU. It's irrigated off of our same potable water system, treated water system. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, it is something that we are looking into. I can tell you that water wells are very expensive, and so you got to balance that with the cost of just continuing to buy water. And so we'll have to look at kind of what that return on investment would look like.
Did you say drilling a well to get the water is more expensive than buying?
I'm telling you that drilling wells for irrigation use are expensive. Yeah, and we would have to do that analysis. We haven't gotten into that level of detail in looking at groundwater, but it is one of the things that we're looking at to try to sort of reduce our peak demands during hot weather conditions.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember John.
Thank you, Mayor. Hey, just to clarify, we're close, but we're not actually going to be going into the stage 2, right? Because I thought this when we got the memo, I thought we are actually going into stage 2, but we're not.
Correct.
Okay.
Not yet.
Yeah, okay. And then I noticed on the stage 2, I know you talked about dividing the watering time from the odd and even numbers of the household, but I noticed you also put like the even numbers on Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday, but the odd numbers like Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, which is back to back. And
the days that we really try to guard against and try to reduce our demand is on Mondays and Fridays. Historically, water usage is higher during the weekends, and on Thursdays. So we try to really recover our system on Mondays and Fridays, kind of coming out of the weekend and heading into the weekend. And when I say recover our system, get our tanks completely full. So that's why we're adjusting those days. And I should have said, since I've been here, we've never gone to stage 2. We've not gone to stage 3 either. We are adjusting the days of week of watering a little bit. If we go to stage 2 and we see that those days are not working well for our system, we may come back with, amendment to the actual days, but we think this scheme will work well.
okay. And you mentioned something about if someone violates the ordinance, then there's a ticket citing. What if someone violates the watering times, then what would the cost be?
I believe the maximum fine is $500 per day, but what we're really looking for is compliance through warnings, similar to how we typically would do or handle a code, violation. We're really looking for compliance. We're really not looking to fine people. So we would be communicating with them over and over before we ever got to, some kind of, and it would have to be an egregious issue where we would be out looking to find people. That's
Okay.
not the intent.
And if the residents saw, I guess, excessive watering somewhere, and if, I guess they could call you and you guys would actually go and talk to that resident?
Yes. Yeah, we have door hangers that we can go put on the businesses or the residents. And we've also been talking to code enforcement. So if we put multiple door hangers out and we're still not getting cooperation, and code enforcement can issue warnings as well.
Is there a limitation as to how long they could actually water, or?
They can't water between 10 and 6.
No, but I mean, other than the hours?
No.
Okay. Because I've seen where someone actually watered that particular part more than 45 minutes. And I thought that's excessive, but
again,
there's no restriction as to.
We're asking for everyone to do their part to manage our water system costs, to not waste water. All those things are good. They're good for Coppell, good for us. We're asking for cooperation.
So all they have to do is call you and let them know, and that you'll go talk to them. And
and giving people the benefit of the doubt, maybe they don't know how to adjust their irrigation controllers, we can help with that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hill.
So I had a question about the odd-even plan. So you've got apartment complexes and HOAs that are, have multiple addresses.
Mm-hmm.
How do they fit into that scheme?
They are, let me look.
Or are they on their own regulations?
I believe they still have a single street address and then individual units, if I'm not mistaken. But that would be something we,
Yeah, I just think we need to make sure we're clear on that, because I know some apartments do have individual addresses per building.
yeah, it's if they have individual addresses for individual buildings, then we would put them under the commercial property owners. So even though they're residential, the property would fall under that commercial property. So that would be Saturdays, Mondays, and Fridays fit in with that grouping of.
In the same way
properties.
with the HOAs?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then, so this projection that you came up with for 19 and then 20 million, I mean, supposedly we're close to being built out. I mean, 5 years ago. I mean, but it somehow it keeps on going. Do you see potential redevelopment increasing that even higher?
I don't. I think that number actually came out of our impact fee study, if I recall correctly, where they're projecting demands and we're looking at infrastructure needs. As I mentioned, I don't know that we'll hit that 20 because if nothing else, the change in the industry with plumbing fixtures and irrigation heads and things like that have reduced the per property use. So I know a lot of cities have already hit their max and they're coming down. So I feel, based on the last few years, it feels like we're fairly flat compared to where we were 3 years ago, 4 years ago. So I think that's good news.
And then can you clarify for the public, there is no automatic irrigation between the hours of 10 and 6, but you can hand water?
Yes, sir.
Does that mean a person with a hose spraying? What about if they put out their hose and have the sprinkler head running for hours from 10 to 6?
We might ask them to shift that to 9 to 10. I mean, I don't know that there's a lot different between that and standing out there with the hose, other than the duration. You don't get tired.
Yeah, you're not going to
standing-
stand out in
Right.
106-degree heat.
Right.
Watering the grass.
Yeah, so
Very
I'm
long
not sure
queue.
we're hearing a lot of that in Coppell. We'd take that on a case-by-case basis and probably work with the homeowner.
Thank you.
I had one question, sorry to drag on here. When we go through the redundancy project, will the second source still continue to be from Dallas Water Utilities?
Well, so we'll get water from, you're talking about the interconnects.
Mm-hmm.
So the Grapevine, they get treated water from Fort Worth, and then they also get raw water and treat it themselves. So that would be the source of the water on the Grapevine side. Louisville gets water from Dallas and Upper Trinity, and they may treat their own water as well. I'm not sure about that. So yes, some of the water would be City of Dallas potentially. We've actually been talking to Flower Mound as well. The line that feeds us at Village Parkway goes on and feeds Flower Mound, one of their pump stations, but they are also fed from Upper Trinity Regional Water District from the north. And so there's a potential that we could interconnect kind of along Lakeside Parkway where Freeport and Lakeside, where we meet them. We've started those conversations as a third interconnect location. So it could be Dallas water, but it's going to end up being blended water.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That being the end of Mr. Collins' presentation, there was really no change from the consent agenda item itself. So unless there's an objection from the council, I'll move, excuse me, no, I can't move. I would accept a motion. Councilmember Nevels.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve consent agenda items 8A through F.
Thank you. Second by Councilmember Carroll. All in favor?
Long and Hosa Smith, Carol Nevels, John Matthew Hill, all in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you very much. Item number 9 is, this is going to be a long story, but it's going to remove the item for the future. This was to consider approval of a maximum proposed tax rate of 525,079. And part of the message here is that we were going to listen to Ms. Tian present that. However, based on the recently received verified values, the values have come in much, much higher than what we had originally estimated. So even though we are very pleased with the existing budget and the very hard work that's been done by staff and the long-range planning that this council has done, we need to go back and make it even better. This was in lieu of the state comptroller's state rule 3.334, and we heard last week that there's been a petition for summary judgment that was filed by Coppell and sister cities. That was heard last week on July the 19th in the 250th Judicial Court by the Honorable Karen Crump. She said that she had done a significant work of prep, and after listening to the testimony, needed to go back and do a significant more amount of research. This was for a summary judgment, and she expected to have that in 2 to 3 weeks. We, of course, are hoping and keeping our fingers crossed for a positive outcome for Coppell and our member cities. But as a result of our certified values coming up by the appraisal district, much higher than I expected, I respectfully request a motion from a council member to postpone item 9 with the council until the August 23rd meeting. I'm sorry, August 9th meeting. Councilmember Nevels.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we postpone agenda item 9 until the August 9th meeting.
Thank you. Second by Councilmember Carroll. All in favor?
Long and Hosa Smith, Carol Nevels, John Matthew Hill, all in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you very much. I think that we're all going to be very pleased and excited to hear Ms. Tian's report that she will have the preliminary number, or not preliminary, the certified numbers available for us at our budget meeting on Thursday night. So we look forward to hearing that. Item number 10, Mr. Hager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is an item that we have brought before you because it's time to call for an election. We have, as you know, sales tax, which we have for a long time had here in the city, approximately 20 years ago now. We adopted to allocate some of that sales tax to the street maintenance fund to repair our streets and to create the Coppell Crime Control District. Under state law, we're required to renew those designations. We've combined those. I've talked to the comptroller's office. They've agreed to accept actually an early election for the Crime Control District in this regard. So we would ask, in order to avoid having to pay for an election twice, that we combine these items and pass this resolution. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Council, have any questions for Mr. Hager? You might just want to enlighten us on why there's a 4-year period on one and 10-year on the other.
Because our great, wonderful legislature put a 4-year renewal on one and a 10-year renewal on the other, and we have feverishly tried to get them to make these special allocations on a 10, 8, 6, and 4 basis so that we could adjust these things to only hold one election instead of having to ask the comptroller to accommodate us. So this tax, for example, we will send, if we have a favorable outcome, we will send those results when one of the terms expire. Obviously, at the first of the year, that will already be in place, and when the other expires later in 2024, we'll already have that resolution, and they promise to hold those results and then automatically enact that. And I've talked to Aubrey about that, and she, who's over that division, has agreed to do that, and thereby saving us a sizable cost and time to hold 2 elections.
Thank you. The request to the legislature to commonize those dates has been on our annual legislative agenda for the last 10 years.
I have written those bills twice.
Yes. So we continue to expect to do that.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Council, do we have a motion on number 10? Councilmember Carroll.
I move to approve item number 10.
Second by Councilmember Hill. All in favor?
Long and Hosa Smith, Carol Nevels, John Matthew Hill, all in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you very much. Item number 11 is our city manager report.
Mayor and Council, thank you. Kent gave an update on the water, so just again, we encourage and appreciate the cooperation we've been receiving from our citizens in helping us to avoid having to go to stage 2, and just want to continue to make our citizens and businesses aware that it's important what they're doing, and we do appreciate it. Regarding the business support programs, Beltline Bingo, the new business support effort launched last week. And this is primarily for those businesses that have been impacted by the construction along South Beltline. The initiative is there to support our businesses while trying to minimize the impact of construction for all. A grand prize winner will be able to select a gift card or a card of their choice from a Coppell business with the total value of $200. The Revenue Recovery Grant program, which was the second piece of the overall program. So at the July 12th update, the timeline for acting the program was pushed back as we finalized eligibility. So letters to eligible businesses went out yesterday, so they should be getting that in the mail these next few days. And the businesses within the construction zone from Southwestern to Interstate I-635 will be the first ones that can apply. So the following guideline is what's being used. Letters were sent out yesterday, Group 1 construction zone applications will be accepted. Then Group 2 all eligible business applications will be accepted. So, Mayor, that's the update that I have for you. And this is a reminder that Thursday night we do have a budget workshop.
Thank you very much. Item 12 is Mayor and Council reports. Speaking of Thursday night, if you are unavailable to come to our budget meeting, then please head on out to Andrew Brown Park East for the Andy Brown Eats to grab a quick dinner and enjoy a meal at the park, Thursday, July 28th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. Secondly, an end of summer reading celebration will be held on Saturday, July 30th from 11 to 1 at the Cosby Library. Congratulations on all the reading this summer. Free tickets for In-N-Out Burger will be handed out during the program. We'd like to thank In-N-Out and Friends of the Library for making this so special. And then also come on out to our farmers market to find local healthy food, develop a relationship with those providing your food, and meet up with friends and neighbors and be a part of the local movement on Saturdays from 8 to noon at the square at Old Town. Item number 13, council and committee reports. These are items concerning items of community involvement with no council action or deliberation permitted. Item A is report on the Carrollton Farmers Branch ISD and Louisville ISD from Councilmember Mark Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor. Let's start off with LISD update. Believe it or not, we're just a little more than 2 weeks away from the first day of school, which is Wednesday, August 10th. If you're interested in finding out more about the 2022-23 academic calendar, go to lisd.net/cal. Applications are now open for the free and reduced price meals program. There's a very important change here for this year. Meals will no longer be free for all students as government assistance associated with the pandemic ends. For more information and to sign up, go to lisd.net/free and reduced. Back to school resources and more can be found at lisd.net/back to school. Enrollment for students new to LISD is now open at lisd.net/enroll. And LISD's back to school supply drive provides students in need with backpacks, supplies, and resources. To register, make a donation, become a sponsor, or register to receive supplies, go to lisd.net/BTSS. And then let's move on to Carrollton Farmers Branch ISD. They are now accepting applications for the 2022 and 23 Bond Planning Committee. They're seeking citizens to evaluate, assess, and prioritize facility needs to help ensure they are providing the best learning environments possible for all CFB ISD students. Ultimately, representatives from this group will report their findings and recommendations to the Board of Trustees. CFB ISD was a recipient of a MetroCrest Hospital Authority, and they awarded $541,000 in grants to them. And this funding will provide an additional counselor to provide increased services for evening counseling connection center at CFB ISD. It also will provide a district substance abuse counselor to serve students who need preventative and responsive services. It also will provide a district crisis counselor to join the crisis team and serve their elementary students. And a registered nurse to teach and mentor their students in the Biomed Academy. And that's all I have for CFB.
Thank you very much. Item B is a report on the Coppell ISD by Councilmember Nevels.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, let's get started with Coppell ISD is excited to welcome students back to school on Wednesday, August 17th. CISD Board of Trustees approved a compensation plan that has provided 4% raises for all employees, as well as it raised the salary for starting teachers, so Coppell ISD can continue to provide the great teaching for which they are known by hiring the best teachers and staff. The board also approved increasing the contribution to employee health care plans. It's an issue that's important to educators and staff alike. Summer is also when the hiring season is in full swing, hiring new teachers, administrators, and other staff members. There are also 3 new principals in place for the upcoming school year, all homegrown talent who call Coppell ISD home for both their work and their families. These new leaders are Mandy Sweeney at Pinkerton Elementary, Chris Gallner at Denton Creek Elementary, and Melissa Arnold at Coppell Middle School East. CISD is still looking to fill open teaching and other positions within the district. Please have people visit the CISD website if they are looking for employment. As the first day of school approaches, there's some other important dates that are important. Teachers and staff are heading back on August 8th. On August 9th, CISD is partnering with the Chamber of Commerce for their new hire luncheon and expo at Coppell High School. Brad also asked me to just say thank you to community partners who work to welcome new staff to the district with their presence at that event. On August 12th, CISD will host the district convocation in person for the first time in 2 years. CISD is looking forward to having everyone together again and to kick off the school year, and they appreciate business partners who will have tables to provide breakfast for all of the employees. Also, one more important date for elementary families is Meet the Teacher Night, which will be Monday, August 15th at 5:30. A couple of other announcements. As Councilmember Hill said, programs that allowed Coppell ISD elementary schools to provide all elementary students with free breakfast and lunch for the past 2 years has expired. Congress did not approve funding in this year's budget to allow schools to serve free meals to students for this school year. Therefore, CISD elementary schools will be transitioning to requiring meal applications for free and reduced meals for the upcoming school year. Families are required to complete an application to determine their meal eligibility. Last thing is, due to federal regulations and overall cost increases for food, prices for breakfast and lunch will increase for this school year to $1.75 for elementary breakfast and $3 for elementary lunch. Parents and guardians or students can add funds to their accounts in person at the school cafeteria by depositing cash or check, or for a small fee, they can use the My School Bucks app to deposit funds with a debit or credit card. And you can visit coppellisd.com/childnutrition for more information. And Mayor, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item C is a report on our Coppell seniors by Councilmember John.
Thank you, Mayor. I've actually missed last 2 months because of work and being out of town, so I just want to thank Councilmember Nevels and Councilmember Matthews, or Mayor Pro Tem Matthew, for covering for me. Sincerely appreciate that. With that being said, a couple of things at the senior center, senior and community center. There's new manager, Callie Willis. She replaced Lacey McKinney, and the new program coordinator is Pam Walker. And they've actually coordinated an Independence Day lunch on Wednesday, June 29th, where they had the first large event with about 65 participants. The Heart 8 actually catered the barbecue, and they also had entertainer that actually sang at the event. They also had the coordinated first supper club trip on Tuesday, July 19th, and they had 28 members on the trip visiting Royal China and Dallas. The Senior Advisory Committee had a number of questions for the upcoming budget approval, and they're actually working with or meeting up with Jessica Carpenter and Sherry Belmont and Adam Richter, and they're seeking information on the status of the budget on post-2020. They want to see that the line items regarding programs at the facilities remain same. And they've asked if the tax revenue for the city has declined, stayed the same, or increased with the recent increase in property tax rates and rent prices. They are continuously asking about the pickleball facility, and they understand that the staff is working toward advocating for the indoor facility, pickleball facility, but they're looking forward to having that discussion moving forward pretty quick. That is all I have, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Item D is a report on the Historical Society by Councilmember Long.
Thank you, Mayor. As I've mentioned previously, the Society does not have membership meetings in the months of June, July, and August, but there's a lot going on this summer at the Society. And of course, the council knows that. The Society is meeting with the city staff to continue, principally parks, to continue their plan of facilities maintenance and repairs at Heritage Park. The Minard store is open on Saturday mornings for visitors and are continuing to add merchandise to sell to visitors as well as Coppell citizens. Members and volunteers are working on plans for Pioneer Days event in October and holidays in the park in December. That will be some very special events, and so they're well into that. The Society has requested additional funds, as we all know, for fiscal year 22-23. They'll be used, if approved, to register a state-approved museum to be housed at Heritage Park here in Coppell. Mayor, that's my report.
Thank you very much. Item number 14 are public service announcements concerning items of community interest with no council action or deliberation permitted. Do we have any public service announcements? Seeing none, we'll move on to 15, which is there was no necessary action from the executive session. So item number 16, there being no further business before this council, we are adjourned at 8:57 p.m.